The House is resumed. Members, when we finished last night, we had completed considering part 1. We now come to part 2. Part 2, this is the debate on clauses 137 to 156, amendments to other legislation and schedule. The question is that part 2 stand part. Venushi Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Morena. It is good to be back in the House, and I just have a few questions regarding Part 2. I'll start at Clause 138, which is Section 9 amendment. This is about the preparation of the jury list, so it amends the Juries Act. And so the current Section 9(4) of the Juries Act has 2 parts which exclude the publication of names. One is in relation to circumstances similar to this, so that's going to be included. The other list of names who are excluded are the people who essentially can't serve as jurors. So people like the Governor-General, parliamentarians and lawyers. It just looked to me on my read that section hadn't been included in this amendment, and so that this was an amendment to exclude that list of people in terms of non-publication. And so a very brief first question this morning is whether that was the intention or whether it's assumed because they can't serve that it's not necessary to also say that their names shouldn't be published, and what the Minister's intention is in terms of Clause 138.
Dr. Owen Sudan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to all. I also want to start with Clause 138, and I've got 2 amendments I will ask the Minister to consider. I guess one of them is quite a specific amendment, and this is an amendment that was delivered at 1:30:02. The reason for this particular amendment, 1:30:01. The reason for this particular amendment is that, like the previous speaker, Venushi Walters, mentioned, this clause has changed, acknowledging that there's been some changes to clauses 13 to 15 and 17 to 21. However, I would like the clarification from the Minister, and the Minister can ignore the amendment if the Minister actually does have a response for this. In the previous instance, an instance that's referred in, for example, in Clause 15, they don't use the term address, they use the term residence, and that's originally in the Juries Act 1981 as well. So I want to check with the Minister, what's the distinction between address and residence, and whether residence would be the current wording and should be kept as the current wording, which is my amendment. My second question to the Minister is, the reason that the list of any persons who, according to electoral, hold any office or engage in any occupation, etc., is because that has now been removed. However, if we're looking at, I know that this is in Part 1, Mr. Chair, but it's relevant to this particular section. If you look at Schedule 1, Clause 12, 1b, it does say that the collection of the person's occupation, for example, may occur up until 31st of December 2027. So if it is still being collected, and it could just be that it's collected but not possibly being declared, or that doesn't need to be, it's collected but not being used in any way, shape or form, that's also possible. But if it is collected, then wouldn't that then still appear? So my amendment in 1:30:02 is to say that we'll just reinstate that particular part, but with a particular repeal clause that is aligned with the date in Schedule 1. Just to cover that off in terms of any sort of potential overlap or potential, just in terms of consistency. So those are my first 2 questions regarding Juries Act for the Minister, and I just saw that Minister received some advice on that.
Honourable Jenny Anderson.
I'd like to speak to the amendment in relation to Regulation 12, which is around the list of late enrolments, and it relates to Part 2, Clause 142. And the purpose of this, I'd like some feedback if possible from the Minister, is that it says under this, it's as soon as practicable after the close of registration, that the Electoral Commission must send to the returning officer a list of those persons whose names have been enrolled under Section 88.3 of the Act on the electoral roll for the district after writ date and for close of registration. So what this amendment proposes is to replace the term as soon as practicable with a specified time frame, and that's in order to give a bit more certainty. So the proposal to replace the term as soon as practicable would within 5 days after the close of registration, and the Electoral Commission must send that to the returning officer, a list of those persons whose names have been entered under the Act on the electoral roll for that district after writ date and for the close of registration. So it's a pretty simple amendment, Mr Chair, but we think that if there's an opportunity here, we're going into the Electoral Act, we're making a whole bunch of changes, we're actually got some looking at in terms of having certainty. We know the Minister really likes tight time frames. He's made those changes up the front of the bill in relation to the 13 days where no longer registration to vote can occur. So if we're giving sort of specified timeframes, if he's interested in increasing timeliness, we know increasing timeliness was one of the factors in the regulatory impact statement that he gave instructions to the Ministry of Justice officials to say that timeliness was one of the priorities. That if those things are in other parts of the bill, we think it's only reasonable that we should look for other good opportunities to do a good tidy up while we're in here and doing this work to make our law better. So having that change under Regulation 12 in Clause 142 would give a specified time frame, that time frame would in fact be within 5 days. And you know, like soon as practicable is great, but it might be quite different from one person to another. So interested to hear the Minister's view on having that amendment.
Mr Chair.
Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Mr Chair, thank you. In relation to the questions around Section 138, I believe that amendments are necessary because the Juries Act covers the details that were raised. In relation to what Mr Shunan referred to, and it may be because we finished at 1:45 a.m. last night after 3 hours of voting, but I struggled to follow what he was talking about. The only point I would make is that the Electoral Commission may collect occupation use to use up old forms, but they won't be sharing that data, and I think that covers what I think he was talking about. In terms of the last amendment around replacing Section 12.1 with within 5 days, we think the current phrase "as soon as practicable" is sufficient. Within 5 days is unlikely to be workable in many circumstances.
Dr. Lawrence-Sunan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. That actually does answer the question I have. Also, thanks to the fabulous officials, of course, as well, for providing the Minister with advice. I do think that, so moving on to amendments to electoral regulations, so this is a substantial part of Part 2. I do note that some of these are genuinely needed. So, 141, for example, revoke regulations 4B. That is something that was already, that's non-existent since 2017. So the tidy up, I acknowledge, is necessary. I want to focus on 144, Regulations 18 amended party list. Presumably, so in this case, the intention of this is to increase what each political party is able to have as part of the party list, currently capped at 65. I did not know that. It's a very interesting piece of information. Upping it to 120, that makes sense. We have 120 members. Number 70. How did you manage to get on the list if the cap is 65? Oh, thank you. Hey, you know what? The whole point of the committee stage is for us to understand. I don't mind being proven wrong. I don't mind learning. If other members have an issue with learning and also,
that is the purpose.
then that's a
purpose.
separate issue.
Hold a sec. That is the purpose, but I do want that debate to come through the chair.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. But it was. But I do thank Mr. Rutherford for that piece of information, which I did not know. So, but anyway, in terms of this, if we're going to be upping it from 65 to 120, I wondered, and this is something we saw when we were having our committee stage on the fast-track approvals amendment bill with the Honourable Chris Bishop, is that he tends to have a habit of like, well, let's just go a bit further so we don't have to come back and redo things again. In this case, wouldn't it be better to up the number from 120 to another number to account for things like overhang? Because, for example, currently we have 123 MPs in Parliament because of that overhang. So I do want to check on 144 that if the Minister would consider my amendment, not by a lot, just to account for overhang, to increase the number from 120 to 125.
Well, it's an interesting suggestion from the member. I think in most circumstances 120 should cover it. I don't think we've seen a circumstance in the history of MMP when any particular party has got 120 seats or anything close by, but we were concerned that limiting it to 65 wasn't sufficient to handle circumstances where there is a blowout in support for one particular party or not.
And it's my first opportunity to participate in this committee stage, so thank you for allowing me to take the opportunity. I wish it was on a bill that was making some positive changes for New Zealand, but unfortunately it's a terrible bill, as you've heard from my colleagues in previous rounds, that will really limit the number of people that can participate in our democracy, so they should be ashamed. The clause, though, that I wanted to bring to the attention of the Minister was in Part 2 in relation to hospital votes, and I was just reading through this particular clause and just had a few questions around how this particular clause is going to function within this Act. The question I have really is, this is a relatively substantive part of the bill, but I imagine if one was to have the time to do a close analysis with the existing Electoral Act, that there will be some similarities. And so I wanted to ask him, with the inclusion of 23, what are the main substantive changes? I've had a bit of a look at the Electoral Commission's website. I haven't had a chance to do that. It seems like quite a simple procedure from having a hospital vote. I also wanted to ask him here, 23(1)(b), when we talk about a special vote here, it's underlined. Is that on purpose, or is that just an error? Not something you usually see that much, so it could be even a printing error. I also am aware that the Minister has put in a number of late amendments, and so I wanted to know if a number of those late amendments are affected, Clause 23 in relation to hospital votes are affected by that. The other thing I wanted to ask was, it seems that hospital is a relatively, is one of the areas where these votes can take place. The other thing is a maternity facility or institution, quite widely defined. I wondered if that was, perhaps calling it a hospital vote meant that it was limiting, as the title, exactly the types of institutions that it could apply to. But this is important because we know that when people are incapacitated or in an institution or having a baby, they do deserve the right to participate in our democracy. This particular provision is extensive. It's possibly affected by the Minister's relatively recent amendments, and so I would like to know the effect of this and essentially whether the Minister was intending to substantively change the procedures in relation to the people who have every right to participate in our democracy when they are, for whatever reason, not able to access a polling booth because they are in a hospital, maternity facility or other institution.
Mr. Chair, my advice is a technical amendment, primarily sort of making clear that it's possible to cast an ordinary vote in hospital as well as a special vote.
Vanessa Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One part of the Minister's answer did leave out the reference to maternity homes. So that is clause 145. And my question is really whether the change in the definition expands the places where people will be able to cast a special vote, or whether it's simply a modernisation of the term, and whether that's in reference to other legislation that uses the language maternity facility as opposed to maternity home. My other question is in relation to clause 146. So this is quite a substantial clause. It sets out the requirements of having a facility to cast those special votes in a hospital. I would propose to the Minister that there could be a very useful accountability subclause attached, where we state that they must notify the Electoral Commission as soon as practicable and within 24 hours if they have received information or acted in a way in breach of the regulation. So the regulation sets out things like when they're assisting a person to cast their vote, that they must refrain from looking at or becoming acquainted with the elector's vote. They can't attempt to influence them. They can't assist them in terms of their actual voting or interfere with the vote. But there's no provision that says what happens if they it is discovered that there is either a purposeful breach of those rules or an inadvertent breach of those rules, and I think it would be useful to have some legislative direction. So just those two questions to the Minister.
Mr. Chair, the change from maternity home to maternity facility is purely and simply a modernisation of the language recommended by the drafters. In terms of the amendment around to Part 2, Clause 146, in relation to D, we don't think that's necessary. That change purely carries over the existing provisions into the new piece of legislation.
Dr. Sudan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it's wise for us to spend a little bit of time on Clause 146, Regulations 23 replace, because I think this is one of the more substantial parts of this Part 2. I want to start by focusing on the hospital votes bit, and there are other things I want to check with the Minister later on, but I want to kind of keep them tight and focused. The first question, so there's a lot of quality of life changes to this part compared to the existing Regulations 23. But one of my first questions is, there are certain parts of that in terms of the process itself for how electors in hospitals, in terms of hospital votes, should be casting their vote. Because as far as I can see over here, subclause 4, for example, it does say that when they issue with a ballot paper, any other person present, but it doesn't actually talk about how the elector and what the elector potentially needs to do, and which is in the current existing regulations. So I do have some amendments on this part, which is just kind of retain some of the process-based elements, and potentially the Minister could say that it's no longer needed as well. But I do think that they do have a valid they do make a valid point in the existing Regulation 23, and this is my amendment papers 13008 and 13009. I just want to follow up on what Venushi Walters is mentioning in terms of accountability for the hospital vote, and there's something that I've also noticed that was quite interesting, and this is relating to my amendment paper 13010, and this is to do with Clause 5B, and that is delivery into possession of the returning officer of the hospital votes and all parcels referred to in paragraph A. The reason I want to pick up on this point, and this is the same as Venushi Walters, is the accountability mechanism. So if we're seeing other parts of the regulation, such as Regulation 24, or if you just even going across the over the page to the newly introduced 28A, you will see that there's a specific requirements for security when it comes to that potential ballot paper. because in the other ones you will see that the ballot papers needs to be delivered into the possession of the returning officer in a sealed or locked ballot box, and if applicable, its key and all parcels mentioned in paragraph A. So my amendment is just to say that, if we're going to be adding additional accountability measures, then we should also consider the security measures, which is to amend this part, which I know is lifting directly out of Regulation 23, but hey, if we're making improvements to the current Regulation 23, we might as well go all the way. Just to say that this should be delivered into a position of a returning officer. The hospital votes in a sealed or locked ballot box, and if applicable, its key and all parcels mentioned in paragraph A. So I just want to check with the minister if the minister would consider that particular amendment also consistent with what Venusia Walters was asking for previously.
To the member, I can assure the member that I have considered that amendment. I've considered it, and I've decided not to accept it.
Venusia Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think that that's a real shame in terms of 146. There were those other two amendments that I'd put forward. One which kind of tidies up or is the tail end of what I previously spoke to, which is adding the words all through their negligence permit. And it's just because at the moment the way 146 reads is that the people who are assisting in those hospital facilities shouldn't actively go in and try and interfere with the vote, but it's possible that also through one's negligence one could permit that information to be disclosed or an individual's vote to be messed with, for want of a better term. And so I just think it's a nice rounding off of ensuring that there's appropriate accountability. I did also propose that amendment to add in Part 2, Clause 146, replace Regulation 23, insert with urgency at new Regulation 2315B between the word deliver and the word into. And so again, it's just ensuring that there's direction. Most of these smaller amendments are about timeliness, so ensuring that through the various pipelines of getting people's votes from their voting booth to a place of counting, we're ensuring speedy direction. And this is extremely important because these are all the pipelines which will help the special vote to be counted more quickly. So it may seem irrelevant or administrative, but in truth, these details do have a significant impact on whether the vote is counted in a timely way. I've just also made a note next to Clause 150, which is the parcels of rolls and ordinary ballot papers issued to advanced voters. So the parcelling up of, if you like, categories of votes by an issuing officer. And this is just a question out of curiosity. Are those parcels then audited or checked? It just seems to me a lot of discretion for an individual to be packaging up what are ballots that won't be counted, ballots that will be counted, etc. And so just wondering, firstly, whether they are reviewed by anyone else after the initial parcelling, and if they're not, whether it would have been useful for us to include something explicit about a check on the parcelling system within Part 2. Thank you.
Dr. Luxon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to just start by following up on the previous question. I acknowledge the fact that the Minister is not intending to accept my amendment paper 13010, but I do want to check with the Minister then what are the security and privacy settings when it comes to hospital votes if they are not being secured, or if there's no mentioning of it being secured when it comes to delivery to the returning officer under 5B. So that's fine, but if there's an existing mechanism, I acknowledge that, but I do want to hear from the Minister on what that existing mechanism is for security and privacy. Now, moving on to my next amendment, and this is something that I've noticed when I was looking at the regulations. The the Electoral Regulations 1996, that it does specify hospital votes as its own thing. Again, acknowledging what Camilla Bellich mentioned previously in terms of the ability for people to cast their votes in those sort of settings, and particularly in a hospital setting. But it then made me wonder, what about other things that people are also going to be doing without, for example, having the need to have those kind of special ability to be able to cast their votes. I think, yesterday we talked a little bit about, what, as far as I see, and I could be wrong, the minister may be able to enlighten us on if there's anything in that regulations pertaining to things like aged care facilities, retirement villages. But I want to focus on one particular amendment of mine, and this is the amendment paper 13007. The reason for this amendment paper is around allowing for, or having it in the regulations, that embassies should also be kind of conducted in a similar format, so that way special voting is made available to New Zealanders overseas. The reason I put in this particular amendment is because that's actually one of the things we've heard when we're discussing with New Zealanders just recently came back, or over the last few years came back from various parts of the world for work or for business or for whatever reasons. And one of the things that they have consistently mentioned is how hard it was to cast their vote while being overseas. And it's very ad hoc in terms of the availability of voting booths and etc. in both embassies and also in consulates. And acknowledging that for some people maybe they're able to register to vote online, but the ability to enroll online, I apologize, but the availability to cast a vote is something that is very ad hoc at this stage. So I do want to check with the minister if the minister would consider the amendment or a variation. If the minister wants to introduce his own amendment on this, I'm more than happy to consider as well, around the availability of embassies and consulates, and to kind of make that concrete within the regulations, electoral regulations 1996, to allow for overseas New Zealander to more easily cast their vote.
Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
A lot of these, thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of these provisions carry on provisions, existing provisions that align with the rest of the regulations. In terms of the hospital votes, Regulation 23 generally covers mobile voting in facilities such as hospitals and care homes. Regulation 23. In terms of overseas voters, are covered in different parts of the regulations in relation to the question that was asked there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at clause 151, which is a very broadly drafted power in terms of the Electoral Commission's powers to determine whether a person casting a special vote is qualified to vote. And I'm just questioning whether the powers just drafted a little bit too broadly. So currently it says, the amendment clause says in Regulation 35, replace the Electoral Commission with, at any time after receiving a special vote and declaration form in respect of the vote, the Electoral Commission. So at any time after receiving a special vote and declaration is extremely broad. And I've just proposed an amendment which is at any time after receiving a special vote and declaration form in respect of the vote, with at any time after receiving a special vote and declaration form in respect of the vote, but prior to the return of the writ. Now, I've proposed that language which is more in line with some of the amendments that I proposed in Part 1, which would have brought the special voting period closer to polling day. So with understanding that the Minister, if he was willing to look at this idea, might want to play with that a bit, because it wouldn't necessarily be prior to the writ. He might want to have it prior to X days before polling day, and it's currently 13, of course, but just being a little bit more specific about the Electoral Commission's powers in terms of being able to determine whether a person is casting a special vote, I think would be quite useful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Honourable James Mager.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't support that amendment. We don't think it's necessary because it's already clear in legislation that special votes must be processed before the return of the writ, and that's the appropriate thing to do.
Honourable Jenny Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question in relation to 154 and the Regulation 65 amended. It says scrutiny is lists of persons who have voted. It provides in there after Regulation 65(3). In this regulation, polling place includes an advance poll. And in regulation, polling place includes an advance polling place. Now, when I looked into that, it says that it's being a person who, under Section 61D, as substituted by the Amendment Act, would otherwise apply. I'm just not clear on what that that's providing. If you could say how that impacts on voting, whether that's making it clearer, would be good to have that understanding. And the other question I had was around parcels of rolls and ordinary ballot papers issued to advance voters, and that was the new Section 28A. It says on that any time before 2 p.m. on polling day, an issuing officer for a district which an ordinary ballot paper must have issued advance voters under the provided section. It says it has to make those up, and I know that I would just like to understand from the Minister what kind of framework or stipulations in there to ensure security of that information. You've got one person there who's I understand if it's one person, it would be good to know. But they're basically doing all of that process that's stipulated under 28A and then being required to deliver it into the possession of the returning officer. So if any information there on how the certified copies of the main roll, the supplementary rolls, the counterfoils of ballot papers that have been issued to voters, and any of the spoilt ballot papers and voting papers, is that one person who does all of that work, and is there any provision to stipulate that when handed over to the returning officer that they've been managed appropriately?
Mr. Chair.
Honourable James Mager.
Just on the first part, the rationale for this change is to bring together those provisions that currently duplicate the same requirements for advance votes and those votes cast on election day. So the changes aren't directly related to the proposal to set the advance voting period, but because we're now formalising the advance voting period, they make the provisions for advance votes more accurate and streamlined, which is appropriate given the formalisation.
Celia Wade-Brown.
Thank you. I'm interested, looking at this timing about 2 p.m, whether there was any consideration given to much greater alignment between local government rules and central government rules. For example, the voting closes at 7 p.m. for the central government, the general election, but for councils, and I'm not sure it's legislative, I presume it is because they all close at noon. And then you've got these alignments also potentially for how special votes and ordinary votes are counted and managed, and how the electoral offices are charged with managing those things. There are wider issues about alignment, about being able to vote up to being able to enrol the day before in local government, but obviously not anymore in central government, and just whether ignoring the increasing divergence between the two is just a matter of central government not really, I'm going to have to put it politely, not giving sufficient attention to local government.
Dr. Lawrence.
I also want to just, I think the question that my colleague Celia Wade-Brown asking in clause 150, the new regulations 28A, is an important one. But I want to focus on, and I'll be really interested to hear the minister's advice on that. I also want to thank the previous minister in the chair regarding his response to my questions on overseas New Zealanders, but also in terms of other areas and groups that potentially needs assistance when it comes to voting. But I'm still waiting to hear from the Minister regarding how, if there's a variation in terms of 23(5)(b) and between that and Regulations 24 and Regulations 28A, what is the security and privacy measures when it comes to 5B? But my question to the Minister is around 28A. And just to check, and this is the point that my colleague Celia Wade-Brown made, is that in general election, the polling day finishes at 7 p.m. Yet over here is that any time before 2 p.m., issue officer, we're already starting to put, I guess, advance. Is this something that's of a standard practice, and why has 2 p.m. been just carried over from existing regulations, and whether any other time was considered as part of that? Because again, that's 5 hours before the voting finishes. Is it, I'm assuming it says at any time before 2 p.m. would imply that 2 p.m. is the deadline? In which case, why is 2 p.m. the deadline and not 7 p.m. being the deadline? So I just want to check with the Minister on how I should be reading that particular clause.
Camilla Ballot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question in relation to Clause 151, which amends Regulation 35, and the specific question I had was in relation to 1512, which actually refers back to 176 of the primary piece of legislation, the Electoral Act. No, 1764. So I went back and I looked at 1764, and 1764 is actually quite an important process in this bill. It essentially allows a vote to be disallowed through a prescriptive process, which is mentioned here in 1512. In 1764, one of the provisions is that when a vote is disallowed, the vote must be, the voting paper must be opened in front of any, I think the wording is scrutineers or any other persons present. Now, the question I wanted to ask the Minister is, because in this bill, the powers of disallowance are arguably increased by this bill, therefore should the requirement in relation to those who witness a disallowance be strengthened as well under the primary clause, which in this instance is 1764. It appears to me that there isn't a requirement if there isn't someone present to have that witness. That could be wrong, and I'd quite like the Minister to get some advice on that. But because of these greater powers and the likely a larger number of disallowances would be made, whether that this particular section in Part 2, 1512, could be amended to allow for the requirement of at least one other person to witness the disallowance of a vote.
Lord James Mager.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll address 2 points from Celia Wade-Brown and Lawrence Shunan. I'm not sure local councils would agree that insufficient attention has been given to local government over recent weeks, so I think they've got enough attention for the Christmas period, and they'll be excited about what lies ahead for them, I'm sure. And just to Mr. Junan's point around why is the time set for 2 p.m? Well, it's all to do with the preliminary count, and if the time was extended out to 7 p.m. as the latest point at which the issuing officer could undertake those steps, it would no longer really be a preliminary count. It would just be the count. So it's to do with the preliminary count for those advance votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am looking at a couple of clauses now. So 153, this is kind of where parcels of spoilt ballots and voting papers and other papers need to be sent, and the change is quite small, but I think it raises an interesting question about speed of the count of the vote as well. So it replaces the Electoral Commission at Wellington with head office of the Electoral Commission. So the small questions are whether that has shifted to Auckland or otherwise. The bigger questions are around whether the Minister has considered that ballots could be counted at the place where they are cast. It is something we discussed in select committee, and certainly that has the potential to speed up the count of the vote, because currently, for example, with overseas votes, they're sent back to New Zealand. In New Zealand, they're sent back to the electorate in which the person is voting, and there's a very big question about our ability to count both effective ballots as well as spoilt ballots and speed up the count of the vote. So those two questions for 153. I'm then also looking at the revocation in clause 156. So this is a revocation of the Electoral Expenditure Limit Order 2025. So I've got it up on my phone and I'm just reading through it. This limits the expenditure in relation to election advertisements published during any regulated period. So that order increased the amount from 16,300 to 16,700, and for general elections increased it from 33,900 to 34,800. For by-elections, the increase was from 67 to 69. So there were a lot of increases in the order itself, and I'm just trying to trace back to what it's replaced by and whether it's replaced by anything in this bill or whether a separate order has been made independently of what we've been considering this week, and therefore this is now redundant, or it will soon be. So if the Minister is able to answer those two questions, I would be very grateful.
Mr. Chair,
Honourable James Mayer.
taking them in reverse because the advice is coming thick and fast. Clause 156 revokes the order because it is now incorporated into Part 1, Subpart 8 of the bill, so it's in the bill itself. And then to the question around the operationalising of, where head office was requested by the Electoral Commission to reflect operational practices, so that's just the best way that they can undertake the process they need to undertake. And to Camilla Ballich's point around earlier validation and qualification, the timing is in order to enable that earlier validation and qualification where possible, but it still undertakes the normal processes that were followed under previous elections. So the thought is that there is no need for additional scrutiny if it's the same processes that are being followed. It's just being more enabling of earlier qualification where possible.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Lawrence-Una.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to pick up on what the Minister mentioned previously in terms of the operational practices of the Electoral Commission. This is clause 153. What the Minister said was really interesting because for me, head office has a very specific meaning in terms of, I understand operational practices, but the current head office is indeed in Wellington, but can I just check with the Minister a point of clarification, if the Minister could answer. Does that mean that the Electoral Commission is considering moving their head office to other parts in the country? It's in order for this, or it's just more of a precautionary measure? Because I would assume that the head office, like Andy Foster mentioned, it will be an outrage if the head office moved to anywhere else other than Wellington. So I don't really then see why we want to change the wording for this particular section.
Mr. Chair,
Honourable James Mayer.
I am unaware of any intentions from the Electoral Commission to move the head office, although a pitch to move it to the Riviera of the South down in Timaru would be more than welcomed. I will just refer to another point that hasn't been covered. I think it was from Venushi Walters. There was a question around why aren't votes counted at the place where they are cast. Well, that would cause significant operational difficulties because, of course, a lot of polling booths are in places where vote counting would be inappropriate. For example, there are some polling booths in public spaces. I cast my vote in the warehouse in Timaru, and it would be somewhat difficult to count votes in a public place like that. So they are counted in one area because it is for operational efficacy and efficiencies and for scrutiny reasons and safety reasons.
Dr. Lawrence-Una.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for that response. I do have to say that I love the Minister's engagement on this section. I think my final question for the Minister is just going slightly back to Clause 151, Regulation 35 amended. I do want to check with the Minister on my reading of 151 subclause 3 because I'm not entirely sure why that new subclause needs to be inserted and what is hoping to be achieved. I don't think the explanatory note actually, unfortunately, in this particular instance, give a very full explanation of that new subclause. So I wondered if the Minister wouldn't mind just elaborating on what that new subclause is intending to achieve.
Yes, I'll get a quick bit of advice to help me elaborate, but I can clarify that the Electoral Commission unfortunately has no plans to move its headquarters either to Auckland or to Timaru. It's just for consistency of language.
Mr. Chair, sorry, we're just wanting to seek your guidance that the Minister's going to get some advice. While that happens, we're happy to, move on or etc., but just want to flag to the Chair if it's okay for the Minister upon getting evidence or upon getting advice to come back to us at a later section.
So it's possible that he could do it in the title and commencement if that is satisfactory to the House?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If that, I see that. Yeah,
Mr. Chair,
Honourable James Magan.
that has just come to. I've just remembered what the advice was. It was in my head. Subclause 3, of course, enables earlier processing, but that can't finish until it's practicable to do so. So it just outlines that part of the process.
Suze Redmayne.
I move that debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes opposed.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes 55. The question is agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Zunan's table amendment to clause 138, section 9, brackets 4 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
There we go. The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Zunan's table amendment to clause 138, section 9, to insert subsection brackets 4A and brackets 4B be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. The party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Sunan's table amendment to delete clause 140 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. Celia Wade-Brown's amendment to Part 2 set out on amendment paper number 474 are out of order as being inconsistent with the previous decision of the committee. Venushi Walters' amendment to Part 2 set out on amendment paper number 492 are out of order as being inconsistent with the previous decision of the committee. The question is that Venushi Walters' table amendment to clause 142 replacing regulation 12 brackets 1 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Sunan's table amendment to clause 142, regulation 12 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Sunan's table amendment to delete clause 143 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Sunan's table amendment to clause 144, regulation 18 brackets 2 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Sunan's table amendment to clause 144, regulation 19 to insert subclause brackets 6a be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Unan's table amendment to clause 146 regulation 23 to insert subclause brackets 3a be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Unan's table amendment to clause 146, regulation 23 to insert subclause brackets 4a be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Vanessa Walters' table amendment to clause 146, inserting new regulation 23 brackets 4 brackets D be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is called for. Clerk to conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Vanessa Walters' table amendment to clause 146, inserting new regulation 23 brackets 4 brackets C be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it.
Ayes have it. Party vote.
Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Taku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Vanessa Walters' table amendment to clause 146, inserting with urgency into new regulation 23 brackets 5 brackets B be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
4 votes in favour.
Tāku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Zunan's table amendment to clause 146, regulation 23, to replace subclause brackets 5 brackets B be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. Te Pāti Tāku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Zunan's table amendment to clause 150, new regulation 28A be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. The party vote has been called for. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
49,
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. Tāku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. I'm just going to pause for a second while we switch over chairs.
Didn't give you much of a sleep.
Morning, everyone. The question is, Vanushi Walters' tabled amendment to clause 1511 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. Tāku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to delete clause 1522 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. Tāku Te Wheres.
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 1523 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori, Tāku Te Wheres,
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi,
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to delete clause 1524 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National,
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour,
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand,
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand,
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First,
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori, Tāku Te Wheres,
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi,
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that part 2 stand apart. All those in favour say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. No. Ayes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National,
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour,
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand,
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand,
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First,
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori, Tāku Te Wheres,
1 vote opposed.
Mariamino Kapakingi,
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 51. The question is agreed. We come now to the schedules. Schedule 1. The question is that the Minister's tabled amendment to Schedule 1 and the amendment to Schedule 1 set out on AP number 493 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National,
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour,
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand,
15 votes in favour.
Green Party of... Can you just ask the member to repeat the vote?
Could you repeat that vote, please?
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand,
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First,
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori, Tāku Te Wheres,
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi,
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 85, the noes are 34. The question is agreed. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Schedule 1, new clause 7B, to commence on 31 December 2025 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National,
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour,
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand,
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand,
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First,
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori, Tāku Te Wheres,
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi,
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Schedule 1, new clause 7B, to commence on a date set by order in council be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. No. Noes have it.
Ayes have it. Party vote.
Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National,
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour,
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand,
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand,
11 opposed.
New Zealand First,
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori, Tāku Te Wheres,
1 vote in favour.
Mariamino Kapakingi,
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Schedule 1 to delete new clause 9.1 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. The contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. Tāku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Maria Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes 68. The question is not agreed. Celia Wade-Brown's amendment to Schedule 1, set out on AP number 474, is out of order as being inconsistent with a previous decision of the committee. Tamatha Paul's amendment to Schedule 1, set out on AP number 478, is out of order as being inconsistent with a previous decision of the committee. Tamatha Paul's amendments to Schedule 1, set out on AP number 479, are out of order as being inconsistent with the previous decision of the committee. The question is that Schedule 1, as amended, stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori. Tāku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Maria Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 51. The question is agreed. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendments to Schedule 2. The question is that Dr. Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendments to Schedule 2 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori. Tāku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Maria Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 51, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Schedule 2 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori. Tāku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Maria Mino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 51. The question is agreed. Members, we come now to our final debate, clauses 1 and 2, title and commencement.
Mr Chair. Mr Chair.
The Honourable James Meagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clauses 1 and 2, title and commencement. Clause 1, title. This Act is the Electoral Amendment Act. It amends the Electoral Act. Clause 2. That is what it does, right? So I can foreshadow that we won't be entertaining any amendments to the title out of the sheer basis that titles should be clear as to what they do and explain to the public and not trifle with the process of the Parliament. So it amends the Electoral Act. It's pretty standard. Clause 2 is the commencement clause. This tells the public on which date the Act comes into force. Now there are 3 sub-clauses here in 2A, B and C, where there is a delayed commencement date. So the Act comes into force on the day it receives, the day after it receives royal assent. There are 3 provisions which delay that slightly to 1 January 2026. They are provisions relating to party registrations, political donations and promoter statements. They will come into force on 1 January 2026. That is to give those people involved in party administration clarity as to when their obligations begin. And I think all parties who hold party secretaries will be supportive of this, to give their administrators and their party secretaries the certainty that on 1 January 2026, that will be when their obligations come into force around new provisions for party registrations, political donations, promoter statements. It makes sure that it is clear that from 1 January 2026, that is when the obligations apply. That is why we have made that date very clear. And I would hope that all parties to support their own party administrators would support those provisions.
Ingrid Leary.
Mr Chair, I'm afraid I don't share the Minister's view of the simplicity of particularly the commencement date of this bill, given some of the complexities involved that have been traversed a little in the previous sections, nevertheless have quite profound impacts on people's voting rights and also clarity, which is something he brought up. So I do know that my colleague Venushi Walters will be speaking at some length about that. But I want to turn to the title and commencement, because the Minister has also spoken about the title being very clear. In fact, what we believe, and certainly what I think, is that this bill is very much about the restoration of the ban on prisoner voting. So if we're going to be clear about the title, then we need to replace clause 1 with "This Act is the Electoral Amendment, bracket, restoration of ban on prisoner voting, bracket, Act 2025, which has been suggested as a written amendment. I don't have the date stamp, but I can provide it to the clerk afterwards. And I think it's important for us to remember that prisoner voting rights have always been controversial in this country. When we've briefly, historically, there have been periods where prisoners have not been able to vote. So between 1975 and 1977, they could, but otherwise they have generally been excluded. I don't think there has been the appreciation until recently of some of the jurisprudential factors that are really important to electoral rights and the Bill of Rights when it comes to prisoner voting, given how so many of the impacts of what happens in the in politics is particularly around putting people into prison, limiting their rights, and then not giving them any say over how that situation occurred. And I am, just to remind the opposition, the government members who seem very animated and engaged in this debate, which is great to see, that this is about changing the title so that we do make the restoration of the ban on prison voting very explicit. We did, of course, have the Taylor litigation, which declared that in 2010 that the ban was inconsistent with the right to vote in the Bill of Rights, and the Waitangi Tribunal highlighted the disproportionate impact on Māori. We have not had an adequate response from any of the ministers sitting in the chair in relation to the questions raised about that. And so I think this is a good opportunity for the minister to give us his views on disproportionality, which has come up in the Bora under the Section 12 Bora analysis in particular. We've not heard any answer about that, Mr Chair. So it is an opportunity, and that again is highlighted in the title that we are suggesting so that he can speak to that. In 2020, the law was changed to restore voting rights for people serving less than 3 years. That was our government's way of finding a middle way that we felt was acceptable to all New Zealanders, so that crimes that were not deemed to be around violence, that were low level, would not disenfranchise people who ought to have a say over policies that directly impact on their family, remembering that we are in a post-colonial environment and remembering that we do have extremes of poverty in our country at the moment. However, that again was reversed by this government in this act, and yet, you know, the distraction really is that this seems to be about what one of the previous ministers in the chair has rather sanctimoniously called about sending the right message. But then hidden in it and not even available in the title is the restoration of the ban on prisoner voting. Why don't we just make that explicit? If that is an ideological position this government wants to take, so be it, but they need to be clear about it. So I would like to ask the Minister why he is abandoning the long-standing and carefully balanced approach in the Electoral Act, where perhaps we could look at restoring or maintaining the voting rights of those who have sentences that are fewer than 3 years. I would like to ask the Minister how he considers that this legislation is consistent with the Taylor judgment, and what does it say about his government's respect for constitutional history, given that it's reimposing a regime whose legal defects have already been exposed for more than a decade, and will he consider just being open and explicit about what they are wanting to do, which is to restore the ban on prisoner rights?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it wouldn't be appropriate to comment at length about Bora compliance or proportionality, because this is a debate on title and commencement, and we've traversed those grounds quite thoroughly in part one. But if a member is interested in the views of the Justice Committee, previous reports, including those around the election inquiry and other amendments to justice legislation which touch on proportionality, make some very insightful comments in the Select Committee commentary around the appropriateness of proportionality, so I'd direct her there, but that's not for this debate. In terms of the members' suggestion to amend the title to focus on a specific policy aspect of the bill, well, of course, this bill amends a number of policies in the Electoral Act, and so it would be inappropriate, in our view, to focus on one specific policy area, because that wouldn't give a clear indication to the public about what this bill does. This bill amends the Electoral Act under a number of policy areas, and to say one specific policy area would, I think, not be an accurate description of the title of the Act, so we won't be supporting that.
Members, the first speaker was indulged somewhat, as often the first speaker is. There's always a fine line between contextualising a proposed change and making that the subject of perhaps something more general debate speech. Following speakers will be expected to be a little bit more explicit. Dr. Lawrence Unans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But I also would like to draw the House's attention to Speaker's ruling 127/3 as a long-standing Speaker's ruling in our Parliament in terms of our ability to also summarise some of the debates in the title debate. And I think that is a really important one here, considering this is a bill, and one of the few bills we've seen this term that has a Section 7 report from the Attorney General. So it is extra important that we are able to be able to summarise some of these conversations. But I want to start with commencement date on this particular issue, and for the members on the other side of the House, they can also get their Speaker's ruling out from their cabinet and just to have a look at that particular Speaker's ruling as well for those who are interested. But going to commencement date, I do think that after the discussions we've had during this whole committee of the whole House stage, that it might be prudent to not consider implementing something as controversial and substantial as this with an overwhelming opposition from the public until the election after that. And indeed, you were seeing something like that in terms of the 4-year term bill, and also in terms of the referendum bill, that a lot of that won't take place until election 2029. So my suggestion is that we will actually delay it a little bit and look at it for the 2029 election as opposed to the 2026 election as one of my amendment papers. Minister and the Chair, I do want to focus on the title, and we have a number of amendments on the title of this bill that potentially speaks more to the context of this bill or different particular sections of this bill as referred to in various subparts of Part 1. We do have amendment papers on this. But I think it is important to check with the Minister. Now, one of the things that the Minister mentioned during the committee stage, and this ties into the title of this bill, is the Minister does have this, the previous Minister, Chair, was talking about the fact that we will then continuously making it easier and easier for people to vote, or include more and more people's ability to vote, and different government will come in and they want to, and it's very hard to, claw some of that back. I want to remind the House that what would be like if this conversation were having this very day, technically we're still on the same day in Parliament, if we were in 1893, or indeed if we're in 1896. This is to say that we're now going to bring back the ability for people to vote early, because they should just simply be responsible for it. We're going to ban prisoners from voting, despite the fact that it's the international standard, and that's what is expected internationally, and that's what is expected in the Attorney General's report. That it is almost like saying that, we gave women the right to vote in 1893. However, we decided that's not going to be the case. We want to take that back. This is the same thing when it comes to the naturalization of Chinese people here in Aotearoa, that Chinese people were denied naturalization between 1908 and 1952. Ergo, many weren't eligible to vote. It's like saying that a certain population in Aotearoa, New Zealand, for example, when we are talking about Make It 16, that the Supreme Court ruling that says that we should be lowering our ability to vote because it's inconsistent with our interpretation of the Human Rights Act. So, Mr. Chair, I do want to check with the Minister, if the Minister would consider the title that electoral further limitation on New Zealanders' ability to vote amendment bill, because this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing that this is a government, as my colleague Celia Wade-Brown has mentioned, and also what the Asian Legal Network has mentioned, this is temporal gerrymandering. This is not something that has any ounce of evidence in it. We have heard from the Minister during the committee stage that, people talk a lot of things, but no one has ever able to put evidence down on paper to say that this is something that the Ministry of Justice, the Attorney General, the Human Rights Commission, any other organization said is a good thing. So I do want to check with the Minister if the Minister would consider the title Electoral Temporal Gerrymandering Amendment Bill, or even Electoral Lack of Evidence Amendment Bill, Electoral Tampering with Elections Amendment Bill, Electoral...
Delaying implementation of the bill. People need certainty about what their electoral laws are going to be leading into the election, and the Electoral Commission needs a sufficient amount of time to prepare for the substantive changes that are being made to the bill. So we won't be delaying implementation. The bill will come into force on the day after Royal Assent, but for those sections that are outlined for 1 January 2026. Just in terms of further amendments to the title, as I mentioned before, we're not in favour of highlighting specific policy changes in the title of the bill. We think it's more appropriate to give a broad title which tells people what the bill does, which is that it amends the Electoral Act. And as much as I would love to, for instance, maybe suggest an amendment around those ranked number 69 on the list should have their name in bold bright letters on the Voting Papers Amendment Act, I don't think that would be appropriate either. So we won't be entertaining changes to the title which highlights specific policy areas. We think it's much more appropriate and sensible for it to be a broad description of what the bill does.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, and can I just start by thanking the Minister for rising and speaking to the title and commencement at the start of this part. That doesn't always happen, but I do think that it's an extremely important flag to the public as to what the bill is about. Interestingly, when I was looking at part of the history of electoral reforms in this area, so the change in 2019-2020 to being able to vote on the same day, I really struggled to find the appropriate bill, because there is a lot of electoral amendment reform in our history. And so this idea that we can name it quite simply and people will know what it's about, in this particular area, that's actually not true. And in the last Parliament, there were a number of different amendments that were proposed, and some of them contained bracketed titles, and that's incredibly helpful. The one I eventually found was not. It was just titled the Electoral Amendment Act, I think number 160 562 was in there somewhere. So there is a benefit to this for the public. I know for us as parliamentarians, I went to Hansard eventually because I just couldn't find what I was looking for. They helped me find it. For members of the public, having that bracketed heading is extremely useful. I've suggested a few which are accurate on the basis of fact. So I've suggested replacing clause 1 with "This Act is the Electoral Amendment brackets unjustified limit on section 12 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 2025, accurate because the government's Attorney General has made that determination. I've suggested "This Act is the Electoral Amendment no compelling justification to limit the right to vote Act 2025, accurate because that's a statement that's supported by the government's Attorney General." So there are some very sound proposals there which would be much better flags for the public. I would also just like to make this a point of concern and then perhaps another suggestion about the title. Several times this week, ministers have made a statement that property rights are central to a modern democracy. Now that's actually not true if we're thinking about what the central principle of a modern democracy is. It's actually voting rights. Voting rights are central to a modern democracy. There are other considerations in terms of the rights at play. Voting rights sit at their centre. Now this isn't a bill that does put voting rights at the centre of that bill, and so I think in terms of a title change, which government members are asking for, is the inappropriate elevation of property rights would be more accurate. And there's a few of them looking a bit confused. The reason is that if you are a fixed abode, you are much less likely to be impacted by the changes that this bill is bringing through the pipeline. If you own your home, people are much less likely to be discounted because they fall off the dormant roll and don't realise they need to re-enrol before a particular time. So it's extremely accurate, and I would hope that the Minister is considering that. Another question for the Minister is whether he considered the likely headlines that will result from this bill when it passes, and perhaps try and incorporate some of the spirit of those likely headlines within a title. So things I've got as likely headlines are anger across the country as mass number of specials are discounted, or lawyers engaged as angry voters seek to hold their franchise, or greatest number of excluded votes are from those who would have been first-time voters, or women offenders unfairly disenfranchised, eligible for home detention but no facilities available, or the curse of the dormant roll drop-off, professionals confused and angry at how they lost the right to vote in 2026. And this one, that I'd suggest from Transparency International, New Zealand rankings plummet in response to voting debacle. Perhaps some of those likely headlines could draw some inspiration for a change to the vote. My final suggestion is that there is some workability with those headlines. Please recommit this bill, as you will do others, no doubt, in this sitting block. I believe that the title needs to be reworked. This bill can be fixed, but there are substantial portions that need to be taken out.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
The Honourable Minister. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not quite sure where we got to in the end with suggesting whether or not parties should vote for legislation based on the headlines that will come out in the media. I'm not quite sure that upholds the spirit of democracy. And the member asked and answered her own question when she was talking about the amendments to the title of the bill, when she said some bills, electoral amendment acts, are labelled as such because they amend the Electoral Act, and other bills have specific descriptors in the title because they do one specific policy thing, and one example would be bracketed acts which change the Māori electoral option. So the member explains perfectly well why specific policy points would be inappropriate for a bill like this, and I think offers no greater explanation as to why the title should be the Electoral Amendment Act than what she just offered. And of course, for anyone out there in public land who is watching this and they are interested in how to find which act amended the electoral legislation prior to the 2026 election. They just need to find the Act, which is named Electoral Amendment Act, with the date that falls between the 2026 election and the election before that, and that will indicate which Act has amended the law prior to that election.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to speak to the amendment that's been put forward on the table, and that is a very good proposal that I think would add significant clarity to this Act, because quite often we do hear from this government that something is about something, and then when you drill into a little bit further you find out there's actually quite a bit more to it. So we think that because this Act affects such a fundamental right of New Zealanders, which is your right to vote, that needs to be put right up front in the title. And while the government might be circumventing democracy by preventing people registering in the early voting period, we think at least it should be upfront about the fact that they're actually doing that. So by inserting in the title this Electoral Act amendment, bracket, making it harder for people to have their say, end bracket, Act 2025. So that would make it really clear to some of the people in my electorate who will be directly impacted by this legislative change that will be going through the committee stage today. And Mr. Speaker, why it is harder for people to have their say is because we know in places in the Hutt Valley where we've looked at the data, for example, Wainuiomata has a really high proportion of people who do their registering to vote in that early voting period. We know that it is younger people who are first becoming aware of it, and my real concern is that this bill will make a detrimental change to people's lifelong voting habits. We know on very good research that if you want a New Zealander to vote for the length of their life, to keep voting in every election, that one of the biggest determining factors for encouraging that positive democratic habit is to get them voting when they're first eligible. When they're 18 years old, if someone votes in that first election when they're first eligible for, the likelihood of them voting in every single continuous election significantly increases. If we miss that first election, it's less likely that they will be engaged in a democratic process. We here in Labour, we believe our society, our country is better off when everybody votes. We want all voices around the table. We think that makes a closer, tight-knit community because people are engaged and they care about their communities, they care about what's happening, they engage in the political process, and so we want to make that upfront, that people know that this government is actually making it harder for people to have their say. And what is a real problem for me in the position that this government has taken is that there's such a sense of, I guess, self-importance or entitlement that there is a group of people who actually think that they have views and ideas that somehow are more important than others in our community. We think that everybody, even if they've moved house, even if they're struggling with the cost of living and they've had to be having to deal with more immediate life issues like feeding their kids, getting shoes on their feet, getting them to school, those are the issues that are predominantly impacting a lot of working New Zealanders. They're not going to be watching this debate and figuring out that Paul Goldsmith has just changed the law and made it even more difficult to enrol and vote. They're too worried about putting food on the table and being able to pay their bills and making sure that they're not being fired from their job after all the job losses that we've seen locally, particularly in the Wellington region I've seen. So those are the kinds of pressures that are on people in New Zealand right now. And so for the fact that they're preoccupied with the cost of living and dealing with those things, they should be not doubly penalised by then preventing them from enrolling in the early voting period. So we believe it is incumbent upon this government, if they're going to do this kind of shady stuff that tilts the playing field in their direction, then let's at least be upfront. Let's get the ad on the box right. Let's say upfront, Mr. Chair, that this bill changes the law by making it harder for people to have their say. And I think that if we put that up front, then at least you might even increase the chances of early involvement. You know, if we make a big point of this now, let's really try and increase that engagement. It could help the government's communication strategy because it's a bold one. They're going to try and communicate to all voters that they've made this change that disproportionately favours their odds. And so why don't we just be honest with Kiwis and say this government's not that interested in democracy. We've just changed the law by making it harder for you to vote.
Diana Kirkpatrick.
Debate on this question now close.
Ricardo Menendez March.
Mr. Chair, I'm just seeking the engagement from the Minister, the previous Minister who wasn't the Chair, made some comments in relationship to the title and relates to 4 of my amendments, which do not seek to trifle with the title, but simply to enable the lay person to understand what this bill is about. Because I think the comments from the Minister in relationship to the title and just keeping it broad, in my view, prevent the lay person from understanding, unless the government is doing a communications campaign around these changes, what the changes are genuinely about. And my changes to the proposed titles in my amendments table at 10 a.m. Range from, for example, Electoral Amendment reducing eligibility to vote in other matters, to further ban to prisoner voting in other matters, to tightening of enrollment deadlines in other matters, shifting of enrollment date to before voting starts in other matters. And I think the reason why I'm proposing these is to enable more people who may be looking at a range of legislation to actually understand what are these changes about. And so if the Minister does not believe that this is a good, useful way of enabling members of the public to engage with legislation, because I don't think most people will just open up a bill that's like Electoral Amendment Bill and then read through quite a substantive piece of legislation to find out what it's about. The title is what enables them to do that. So that takes me, seeking understanding of the Minister would be agreeable to this, but in relationship to the commencement date, because this comes straight after Royal Assent, has the Minister considered any allocation of resources, and if so, how many, to any communications campaigns that will enable members of the public to understand the changes that are occurring as part of this bill? And if so, how many resources, if any, are going to be allocated to help people understand the changes that have occurred as part of this bill? Because they're quite substantive changes. I think a lot of members of the public will still believe that, based on the previous elections sort of procedures, that they can change their enrollment date on the day, for example. And the Minister in his comments alluded to the fact that media headlines are not necessarily the best way to acquire information about a piece of legislation. So far, what I have seen is mostly this bill being debated in the media, not through more accessible forms of communications campaigns that may reach to actually some of the people that may be most likely to not be able to enroll promptly, people who may be working multiple jobs, people who English is their second language, disabled people. And so I'm seeking the Minister's engagement. Since the commencement date is quite quick, what resources, if any, will be allocated to ensure that as many members of the public are aware of the changes, and whether these resources will include outreach within the prison population as well. And so whether, for example, he'll be working with corrections to ensure that people in prisons are able to understand the changes of eligibility. Because the perverse outcome, if we don't have any sort of resources and engagement around this matter, will be that people will just try to enroll, whether they're in prison, for example, and they may have thought that they would have been able to effectively just loading time and resources into a system that will just simply tell them, actually, you're not eligible. Or you'll have people showing up to try and enroll after voting starts, believing, based on the previous selection procedures, that they could have been able to. So genuinely seeking good faith engagement in relationship to whether a better title would enable people to better engage, and engagement from the Minister as to what level of resources, if any, will be allocated after the commencement date to ensure that people actually understand what these changes are. If he will not allocate any resources, I recommend that he delays the commencement date so that those resources can be allocated and discussed.
Mr. Chair, in terms of the title comments in relation to clarifying the message in terms of encouraging people to be enrolled as per the legislative requirements to be enrolled, it's compulsory to be enrolled. I don't agree with changes to the title. The title of the bill, the Electoral Amendment Act, I think is clear about what it refers to. In terms of the matter raised about the commencement, we want to get the commencement of the bill as soon as possible because there are many changes that this bill makes, including such arrangements such as automatic enrolment, making that easier, changing the rules around the use, not necessarily having to use postage, which people no longer use to the same extent, changing the thresholds for inflation for donations, a whole bunch of things that need to happen sooner rather than later. In terms of the question in relation to funding available for advertising campaigns, at the last election the Electoral Commission spent about $12 million on advertising campaigns ahead of that election. They have that budget and more for the current term, and it is the basic expectation of the Electoral Commission to be using advertising revenue, advertising spending to have a clear campaign about encouraging people to get enrolled. The purpose, and we've discussed this at enormous length in the debate on Part 1, but the purpose of the changes that we're making around the electoral, the enrolment cut-off is we will now have a simple and plain message, which is get enrolled, rather than having a mixed message that we've had for a number of times, which was get enrolled, but by the way, you don't need to, you can rock up on election day and enrol at that point. And so I think it would be an easier matter for the Electoral Commission to send a clear message to all New Zealanders to get enrolled.
Cameron Luxon.
I move that debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Action New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
1 vote opposed.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote opposed.
Mariameno Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 52. The question is agreed. The question is the Honourable Dr Duncan Webb's tabled amendment to Clause 1 inserting late counting of special votes response into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
1 vote in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariameno Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is the Honourable Dr Duncan Webb's tabled amendment to Clause 1 inserting restoration of ban on prisoner voting into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
1 vote in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariameno Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is the Honourable Dr Duncan Webb's tabled amendment to Clause 1 inserting limitations on late enrolment into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
1 vote in favour.
Taku Te Whereas.
1 vote in favour.
Mariameno Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Celia Wade-Brown's 7 tabled amendments to Clause 1 are out of order as not being objective descriptions of the bill. Vanushi Walters' 4 tabled amendments to Clause 1 are out of order as not being objective descriptions of the bill. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 1 inserting disqualification for registration and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te pōti whakahei.
Hey. Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te pōti whakahea.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te pōti whakahei.
The ayes are 49, the noes are 71. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 1 inserting electoral registration and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
1 vote in favour.
Taku Te Ferris.
1 vote in favour.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 1 inserting adjustment of expenditure limits and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Noes have it.
Party vote.
Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
1 vote in favour.
Taku Te Ferris.
1 vote in favour.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 52, the noes 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 1 inserting offences and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
Ko te komaringa na pōti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 1 inserting advanced polling and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
Te komarima na pōti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendments to clause 1 inserting elector registration details and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
Te komarima na pōti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes 68. The question is not agreed. Dr Lawrence Yunan's remaining tabled amendments to Clause 1 is out of order as not being objective descriptions of the bill. The question is that Ricardo Mendes March tabled amendment to Clause 1 inserting reducing eligibility to vote and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is Ricardo Mendes March tabled amendment to Clause 1 inserting further ban to prisoner voting and other matters into the title to be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is Ricardo Mendes March tabled amendment to Clause 1 inserting tightening of enrolment deadlines and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes 68. The question is not agreed. The question is Ricardo Mendes March tabled amendment to Clause 1 inserting shifting of enrolment date to before voting starts and other matters into the title be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakahei.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakahei.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te poti whakahei.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakahei.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 52. The question is not agreed.
Is agreed.
Is agreed. Sorry. The question is that Honourable Dr Duncan Webb's tabled amendment to Clause 2 to change the commencement date to 1 January 2027 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaei.
Whakahei.
Hey.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, aye, sorry, yeah. Sleep deprived, sorry.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Taku Te Ferris.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is, the Venusi model Venucci Walters tabled amendment to Clause 2 to change the commencement date to 1 July 2027 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it.
Aye.
Please conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kamarima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Tāku Te Whereas.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Clause 2 to change the commencement date to 31 December 2025 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kamarima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Tāku Te Whereas.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakaai.
The ayes are 52, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Clause 2 to change the commencement date to 1 January 2027 is out of order, has been the same as a previous amendment. Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Clause 2 to change the commencement date to 1 year after a date set by order in Council is out of date, is not being in the correct form of legislation. The question is that Clause 2 stand apart. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kamarima na poti whakahei.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te poti whakahei.
Tāku Te Whereas.
Ko tahi te poti whakahei.
Mari Meno Kapakingi.
Ko tahi te poti whakahei.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 52. The question is agreed. I'll report this bill with amendment.
The House is resumed.
Madam Speaker, the committee has considered the Electoral Amendment Bill and reports it with amendment. Madam Speaker, I move the report to be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. This bill is set down for third reading next sitting day. I call on Government Bill number 11. Oh, okay. We move to Government Bill number 11. Honourable Simon Watts.
Madam Speaker, I present a legislative statement on the Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill.
That legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament website. Honourable Simon Watts.
Madam Speaker, I move that the Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill be now read a first time. Well, Madam Speaker, this bill amends the Climate Change Response Act 2002 to upgrade the biogenic methane component of New Zealand's 2050 climate target and make several other changes to ensure our climate legislation remains fit for purpose. The bill supports the government's commitment to ensure that our targets are informed by science, contribute to our international commitments, and of course are achievable. Farmers have been clear that they need a methane target that is realistic and provides certainty about what's expected of them. The current target requires biogenic methane emissions to be reduced by 24 to 47% below 2017 levels by 2050. The agricultural sector has consistently told us that this target is unworkable and creates economic uncertainty across rural New Zealand. This bill delivers the clarity that our farmers have asked for. This government is focused on driving economic growth, and we recognise that growth begins on the land. Our primary sector is not only our biggest sector, Madam Speaker, it is central to our national identity. New Zealand's food and fibre producers are world leaders, and they are playing a vital role in our economic recovery. We should celebrate their contribution, and we do celebrate their contribution. And this bill reflects our belief that a thriving climate and a thriving economy go hand in hand. By setting methane targets that are grounded in science and practicality, we are ensuring that our climate policy supports the productivity and resilience of rural New Zealand. In mid-2024, we commissioned a panel of international and local experts to carry out an independent scientific review of New Zealand's biogenic methane targets. That panel provided clear, evidence-based guidance on what levels of biogenic methane emissions reductions are consistent with no additional warming from a 2017 base year. We have considered the panel's report alongside advice from the Climate Change Commission and have also considered possible impacts on our economy. The contribution of the target to limiting warming to 1.5 degrees and what we want to achieve as a government. Based on all of this, we have determined that the biogenic methane target should be reset to 14 to 24%. Below the 2017 emissions by 2050. The methane review found that a 14 to 24% reduction, Madam Speaker, in biogenic methane emissions is consistent with stabilising the warming contribution of New Zealand's biogenic methane emissions at 2017 levels in 2050. This range maintains an appropriate contribution to our international climate change commitments. Setting targets is ultimately about combining the best available science with judgments that reflect our national context. We don't want to reduce emissions here at home only to have less efficient farmers from other countries to increase production. The new target reflects the latest science and research and provides a credible foundation for our policy direction while ensuring the continued strength and viability of our agricultural sector. Agricultural, Madam Speaker, as you know very well, is the backbone of our economy. It contributes 81% of our export goods and feeds over 40 million people worldwide. We must protect that strength while reducing emissions. It's important to note that our international targets will not be changing as a result of resetting the domestic 2050 biogenic methane targets. New Zealand is committed to achieving emissions reductions in the country's nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement and takes its obligations under international agreements extremely seriously. This bill provides clarity and, of course, confidence while maintaining our credibility on the global stage. This bill also provides for a formal review of the biogenic methane component of the 2050 target, and this will be completed and tabled in the House no later than 31 December 2040. The review will assess whether the targets remain relevant with the view to recommend whether the target for the reduction in biogenic methane emissions should be a single percentage target. It will also consider the latest science on methane's impact on warming, New Zealand's progress in reducing emissions and international efforts under the climate agreements that we are part of. This ensures our long-term targets remain evidence-based, credible and aligned with global best practice. Madam Speaker, Cabinet has also agreed to defer setting the fourth emissions budget. This decision was originally due before the end of this year, but of course the Climate Change Commission's advice was based on the current legislated methane target. As a result, once that target is updated through this bill, The Commission's advice will no longer reflect the policy settings in place. Deferring this decision is a practical result of that, and it allows us time for the Commission to update its advice, which in turn will ensure our emissions budgets are set in a way that are credible, consistent and achievable. The Commission's advice on revisions to existing budgets will also be updated. The Government has also agreed to require the Climate Change Commission and the Minister to consider any implications for domestic food production when advising on and setting emissions budgets. This will ensure that these issues are given greater prominence in advice and decision making. We are also producing changes in the bill to remove the requirement for the New Zealand ETS settings to accord with New Zealand's nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Requiring alignment with the NDCs introduces uncertainty, particularly around the timing and availability of offshore mitigation and risks undermining the scheme's effectiveness. The ETS is a domestic policy instrument that cannot directly influence offshore mitigation. This change will appropriately focus the ETS on delivering domestic emissions budgets and targets. This change is included in this bill to ensure that there is no disruption to the 2026 ETS settings process. Madam Speaker, within the next decade we expect effective, safe and easy to use methane reduction tools to be widely adopted across the farming systems in our country and beyond. This will support us to meet the updated target while continuing to grow the value of exports. Technology is key to unlocking the full potential of our agricultural sector while meeting our emission reductions goal. That is why this government has invested over $400 million over 4 years to accelerate the development and uptake of tools and technologies that reduce on-farm emissions. Our approach is clear. We want to support innovation, avoid blunt instruments and work constructively with the sector to deliver practical, lasting solutions. New Zealand farmers are amongst the most carbon efficient food producers in the world. With the right support, they will continue to lead globally in sustainable food production. This bill is about fairness. It is about credibility and, importantly, Madam Speaker, it is about progress. It ensures our climate targets are grounded in science, achievable in practice, and of course aligned with the realities of our economy and our environment. Madam Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
Madam Speaker, the question is that the motion be agreed to. Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a very curious day to have this particular bill in the House going through all stages under urgency. Madam Speaker, I have in my hand a copy of the Paris Agreement. The agreement that the overwhelming vast majority of countries in the world signed up to. An agreement that the world would make its best efforts to have only 1.5 degrees of global warming and at the very least would achieve only 2 degrees of global warming. It was an astonishing agreement across the world and it reflects the absolute existential crisis that we have with climate change. Madam Speaker, that agreement was signed on the 12th day of December 2015. Inside these walls, today is the 9th of December, out there in the real world where climate change is occurring, it is 10 years to the day since John Key's national government signed up to the Paris Agreement. And here we are today in this House downgrading our methane target, valorising dubious science and walking away from our commitments to reducing climate change, walking away from our responsibilities to future generations. Sure, this might be cheaper in the short term, but the costs will be borne by our children and our children's children. That side of the House is walking away from intergenerational responsibility. Madam Speaker, the Labour Party does not support this bill. It does not support this bill because despite the repeated claims of science, the analysis that this bill is based on is dubious science at best, and it is deeply politicised science. It is science that has been rejected worldwide and by credible climate scientists. So that's the first reason as to why we are rejecting this bill. We also reject this bill because sneaking in there in clause 5, I think, is a reliance on the concept of carbon intensity. A concept that seems right in the first place, seems right initially or seems plausible, but actually leads to increased emissions from New Zealand. So that is the second reason as to why we are rejecting this bill. And the third reason we are rejecting this bill is because it has been carried out with a lack of consultation. A lack of consultation with opposition parties, a lack of consultation with New Zealanders, consultation that sitting in the Minister's RIS suggests could be done through the select committee process, but there is to be no select committee process on this bill. You know, back in 2018 and 2019, Todd Muller, for whom I have an enormous amount of respect, and James Shaw, for whom I also have an enormous amount of respect, and David Parker, for whom I have an enormous amount of respect, worked hard together to achieve a bipartisan consensus on what New Zealand should be doing around climate change. It was a consensus that every single member of Parliament voted for, bar one. And even that person didn't get around to voting against it. There was genuine genuine agreement as to what we could do, all of us together, to ensure a fit world for our children. And that party has walked away from it. One meeting with the opposition spokespersons, and only because we pushed for it, and then we were informed at the last minute about what was about to happen. So for those reasons, Madam Speaker, the Labour Party rejects this bill. We will vote against it and we will fight against it all the way through this urgent process.
Francisco Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill represents a deep betrayal of New Zealand. It represents a betrayal of the voters, a betrayal of the planet and our future, and a betrayal of the farming community that they purportedly represent. Madam Speaker, the first betrayal is the voters who put us all here. The National Party came into the election promising to meet New Zealand's climate targets, not to water it down, but to meet it. It is a betrayal to the values of good faith and democratic norms and the code of honour that everyday New Zealanders live by, Madam Speaker. When the zero carbon bill set targets...
A point of order, Simon Court.
Speaker, just raising a point of order about the House. Do appreciate the members' passion, but I just really appreciate it because it is a Friday morning. We've been here very late. If we just keep it to a normal conversational volume.
That's how I speak, Madam Speaker.
Oh yeah.
It's my normal voice.
Okay. And look, I appreciate the point of order. I was sitting here thinking myself as well. I love the passion, but the member does have a microphone, so maybe
they need to tone it
passion
down
with a little bit less decibels, and it would be really good. Thank you. Carry on.
May I continue, Madam Speaker?
Carry on. Yes.
When the zero carbon bill set targets in Parliament, Madam Speaker, that was a compromise. A cross-party consensus that everyone in this House was in parts unhappy and happy about. Every single party represented in this House voted for it. The targets in that legislation was a product of years-long and deep negotiations because we understood that everyone in New Zealand needs stability and the climate change targets. Today, Madam Speaker, we can be under no illusion. It is the National Party that is shattering that consensus under urgency, without a select committee process, without any public input, without a full picture of what it could cost us. This is a betrayal of our planet and our future, and a livable future that we require. It weakens our methane targets and allows the equivalent of 500 years of operation from the Huntley power plant, and it allows the equivalent of 500 years of operation for the Huntley power plant to operate. It decouples our emissions trading scheme from New Zealand's global pledges to the world, undermining confidence in the scheme and raising doubt about New Zealand's fidelity as an international partner.
Shame.
It puts at risk billions of dollars of trade and tries to clumsily hide the evidence by redacting how much it would actually cost in the regulatory impact statement.
Shame.
It asks, once again, that the public bear the additional household costs of up to nearly $300 a year to subsidize corporate polluters.
Shame.
Under this government's cost of greed crisis, it is everyday New Zealanders that have to pay for the cost of climate inaction.
That's right.
And last but definitely not least, Madam Speaker, it betrays farmers and the agricultural community that members opposite claim to represent. It represents, Madam Speaker, the biggest betrayal of the agricultural sector that this country has seen. Farmers, as Madam Speaker, are at the front line of our climate crisis. Few other sectors in our economy are as exposed to the impacts of climate-exacerbated weather events than they are. It betrays farmers, Madam Speaker, by sedating them under a warm blanket of complacency and half-truths, rather than enabling them to step up and be the world leaders I know that they are and want to continue to be. It betrays farmers by exposing them to trade risks, billions of dollars in trade agreements, and wider reputational risks for the green premium of the clean, green New Zealand brand. And it betrays farmers, Madam Speaker, by destroying the consensus that they and the wider society were shielded and protected under, Madam Speaker. Now, thanks to the irresponsible betrayal of the parties that claim to stand up for them, every 3 years, the agricultural community will now have to face the roller coaster experience of the chopping and changing of targets. Because make no mistake, Madam Speaker, this weakening of the Climate Change Response Act and the betrayal of the planet and the betrayal of the farming community and the betrayal of the voters that it represents will not stand under a future government. This will be a priority to change. And look, the members opposite can't have it both ways. They will not be able to complain when we use the same process that they introduced this bill under the cover of night, under urgency, without any select committee input, to change the processes. So I won't hear any complaints from the member opposite next year when we swap sides and we change this deeply damaging, deeply irresponsible legislation that we, Madam Speaker, in this House are proud to stand against.
Honourable Andrew Hoggard.
Perhaps I should go back to how the targets were set in the first place. These original targets, so that was set in the bill that we are changing, they came from a 2018 report by the IPCC, the 1.5 degree report. Now that report modelled 70 different pathways at which 1.5 degrees could be achieved. And so it looked at how can we turn the dial on all the gases to achieve 1.5. Now in some of those modelled pathways, they actually had methane increasing. Now where they settled, they did all that work and they said, right, what's the least cost for the globe? What's the most efficient way we can achieve this for the globe to come up with some global recommendations around what the reductions should be? Now, they viewed that least cost for the globe was 24 to 47% in methane reductions, but that was for the globe. not for New Zealand. No work was ever done, was that least cost for New Zealand. Now, when in that report, they also said, do not use these targets as national targets. So it was for the globe, not individual countries, because every country is different. Don't believe me? Go and have a look at various articles written by the lead author of that report, Miles Allen, professor at Oxford University, who says exactly that. And he's said it many times, New Zealand should not have adopted those targets in that report as national targets. In fact, the dodgy science that someone has mentioned is actually science done by Miles Allen, lead author at the IPCC. So where do we get to there? I mean, least cost for methane. How do they come up with those numbers? So they looked at methane globally. Where does it come from? The most common area was leaky oil and gas wells. Least cost for the globe, plug them up, stop them leaking. Second, landfills. Stop. We won't make sure. We'll make sure they don't leak. Not leaky ones. Second, landfills. Make sure that they're not leaking. We do a good job of that, as I'm sure my compatriot Simon Court can attest to. Making sure we're using their gas. And then third was agriculture. And what were the things in agriculture that were least cost to reduce? Better management of rice paddies. We don't have a lot of those in New Zealand. And secondly, manure management. And manure management refers to the big barns where you pile up all the manure outside and dispose of it. Again, not something we do in New Zealand. We're out in the pasture. It's all been taken care of. So really, those numbers did not apply to New Zealand. So that's how we got these old numbers. We plucked out numbers from a report that wasn't meant for New Zealand, wasn't focused on New Zealand. So what we've done, as the Minister spoke earlier, we got science-based. What does New Zealand need to do to not add any additional warming? That's where we've landed at. That's what the Paris Accord's about, limiting additional warming. And so that's what we've achieved. Now, someone before mentioned about food prices and all the rest of it, and cost of living, and it's been mentioned a lot. You know, why are we doing all these bills? Are they going to reduce the cost of living? Well, ask yourselves, you talk a big game over there, but ask yourselves, if you were to oppose this bill, we already have a supply constraint around the globe for milk and meat, right? So to achieve these targets, so why have the prices gone up then? Because there's lack of supply. I won't waste my time trying to explain supply and demand again. So if we reduce supply in New Zealand, which was what the previous government was intending with it's in the reports that the Minister commissioned and probably never read, we would have had less beef. That would have pushed up prices. Voila, if you're voting against this, you are voting for higher food prices. That's what you're voting for. Make no clear mistake about that. So in that, I commend this bill to the House.
Honourable Mark Patterson.
Madam Speaker, this is a long-awaited day for our agricultural sector and our farmers. The monkey finally coming off our back. Farmers were bemused as to how we could possibly reduce biomethane emissions by 47% by 2050 and why they should have to pay a tax for simply farming their livestock. Biogenic methane is a short-lived gas. It's part of a biological cycle. It is almost a closed cycle. These are not emissions released from fossil fuels that sit in the atmosphere for centuries and warm the planet. It was economic suicide for us to punish the world's most carbon-efficient farmers and shift that production offshore. And worse, it was actually against the provisions in the Paris Agreement that specifically protect food production. Our rural communities, Madam Speaker, have paid a heavy price for climate policy, especially our sheep and beef sector in communities that are reliant on those industries. Widespread afforestation has heavily impacted and hollowed out many of those communities. It's easy for rural communities to plant and walk away. Those communities are paying twice. They're paying, well, they were going to be paying twice under the former regime. Once with their community being shut down by widespread afforestation, and then for those that are left, a tax on methane emissions. This government committed to a methane review. It was a credible review with an internationally acclaimed panel. The no additional warming lens showed a 14 to 24% reduction was required to keep within that no additional warming band, depending on if it was a 1.5 or a 2 degrees. I'll make no apologies here. New Zealand First think it should be a flat 14. We see absolutely no benefit in punishing the world's most efficient farmers. We are investing in mitigation technologies significantly. There are promising developments. We are aware at a commercial level that there is both commercial and trade deal incentives to reduce our limits, reduce our emissions and play our part. We are not shying away from that. We just need the targets to be credible and achievable. What is not often admitted on that side of the House anyway is agriculture is already meeting its current emissions targets for 2030. We're on track to get very, very close. Unfortunately, that's been done by widespread culling, and the impact on our rural communities has been significant. We have paid a burden disproportionate to what our urban colleagues have had to do. We will not punish our farmers. We will not shut down our rural communities. We absolutely commend this bill to the House.
Orini Kaipara.
E te pika tēnā koe kātū au, hei māngai mo te Pāti Māori, kātū anō hoki ahau, me te riri. I give rise for the first reading of this climate change legislation with riri, mamai and with absolute determination, because what this coalition government has done over the past 2 years is not merely neglect, it is not merely incompetence, but it is an assault. A deliberate, calculated assault on our taiao, on our mokopuna, on te tiriti o Waitangi, and on the very future of Aotearoa. Let us lay bare the truth. This government repealed the clean car discount, the single biggest driver of EV uptake. Overnight, registration slumped. They killed the main incentive, and now high-emitting utes pour in while the rest of the world accelerates toward zero emissions. By gutting Labour's modern resource management system, they also pulled us back to 1991, removing climate obligations, removing cumulative effects assessments, and ripping out te tiriti hooks. The Ministry for the Environment warned us, Madam Speaker, this is a return to outdated law at the very moment we need future-focused planning. And then the Fast Track Approvals Act, a law that allows ministers to tick off mines, coal projects, iron sands extraction, even projects previously rejected behind closed doors. That is what this government calls progress. I call it state-sponsored environmental vandalism. Others have called it a war on nature. Despite outcries from our whanaunga from across Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, the Pacific, who are literally sinking, they now look at us, a nation once priding ourselves as a leader in climate action, now one of the others who put profit before people and planet. This government has reversed the ban on offshore oil and gas exploration. In 2025, in the hottest years the planet has ever recorded, the coalition has chosen to drill, not decarbonise. It is running full speed toward more fossil fuels. Shame. They cut the $4.5 billion Climate Emergency Response Fund, the tahua dedicated to climate action. Around $2.5 billion in climate programs wiped out in one budget. The Climate Change Commission, they lost a quarter of their funding and their independence is being stripped away. Gone is the carbon neutral government program. Gone is Māori climate resilience. Gone are native forests at scale. Gone is jobs for nature. Gone is freshwater protection funding. And gone are climate evidence systems and climate governance roles. This government did not just turn off the tap, they ripped out the pipes and they sold them for scrap metal. Now let's get to Māori rights and te tiriti, Madam Speaker. Ngāti Pāua has voiced deep concerns about this bill, Madam Speaker. They've told me direct that with sea level rise, coastal erosion and warming waters already putting pressure on depleted taonga species, they have warned that fast-track processes could compound long-term harm, especially in the Hauraki Gulf, Tikapa Moana, which is in a state of ecological crisis. They remind us that true kaitiakitanga means strengthening resilience and restoration, not weakening it. Mike Smith of the Iwi Chairs Forum sums it up pretty well actually. If you don't care to listen, and that's your problem, you don't listen. I have zero faith in this government, Mike Smith says. They are running with the oil industry and industrial ag sector. Everyone else can burn. That is Mike Smith. This government is not in partnership with tangata whenua. It is not honouring te tiriti. It is actively placing Māori communities in the firing line of climate impacts. Floods, droughts, cyclones, heat. Our people face the sharpest edge, yet are given the smallest voice. This legislation is not simply about emissions, Madam Speaker. It's about restoring integrity, restoring science, restoring te tiriti, and restoring the future of all our mokopuna, the one that they deserve. I stand here to give rise to all their voices. We can change things. We can stop this madness. Ko te mana o te taiao, ko te mana o te tangata, ko te mana o ngā mokopuna, that is the responsibility before all of us. Te Pāti Māori utterly and uncategorically opposes this bill.
Catherine Weed.
Back to the real world.
Day for our New Zealand farmers, the backbone of our economy, our agriculture sector, where we are resetting the methane targets, because we are the most carbon efficient farmers in the world. We can have a thriving economy and a thriving climate. I commend this bill to the House.
Excellent local member.
Honourable Rachel Brooking.
Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to speak on this first reading, and I'm going to be speaking on a few more readings as well. But just to start off with where the last speaker ended, it seems that many on that side of the House say our farmers are the most carbon efficient farmers in the world. And that member might have said carbon efficient, but I've also heard other members say most efficient, most emissions efficient farmers in the world. So we will be asking the Minister about that and when that evidence that they might be relying on, if they're relying on evidence which seems unlikely, comes from. But also to go to this problem definition, if those members say we're the best in the world so no reductions are needed, then they need to demonstrate how we're the best in the world. And they need to demonstrate, I've just heard that they did not say that. I've got Patterson said, ours are the most climate efficient farmers. The chair of the Environment Select Committee just said, and she used the word carbon, I think, they're the most carbon efficient farmers. So if that is the rationale for this legislation, we're already the best. And I think I heard from Hoggard, the idea of Paris is to move everyone to be better, but we're already the best, so everybody else needs to move to us. Well, what, Madam Speaker, if they have already moved to us? Or what happens, Madam Speaker, if that side is right and we are overtaken? And so we might have been the best, but then we're the second best. Where is their logic then? And in fact, this bill not only changes the methane target, but it also changes the ETS settings. And we haven't heard very much about that either. But it is hilarious, I think. It's good to find something amusing on a Friday in urgency. But at page 3 in
Only
the
Tuesday in here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for reminding me of that. But on page 3 here we have the explanatory note, and it says that the NDC accordance requirements, which this bill will change, it says here, risks undermining the proper functioning of the New Zealand ETS. Madam Speaker, the ETS is already undermined by all the actions that this government has done. And we just heard a recital of all the terrible things that this government has done to stop addressing climate change. That's what we heard from the previous speaker, and she set that out very well. So I won't repeat it all in this speech, but the ETS is already broken, and it is broken because of what this government has done in undermining all those actions relating to carbon emissions. That's what they've done. So we now have methane being discussed here. And New Zealand has this split gas approach, and that is unusual, Madam Speaker, around the world. Sometimes people will say, oh, we just need to consider the gases separately, and in fact we do in New Zealand and have done since these targets were introduced. So the target for biogenic methane is quite different from the target for carbon and other gases. We've got other gases in there as well that we should not forget to talk about, including nitrous oxide, which is very important. But this bill is about reducing that methane target. So we have a large target already in the bill from 24 to 47%. And 24 is an interesting number, Madam Speaker, because this amendment still uses that number 24, but instead of going up to 47, it goes down to 14. There's no need to change this legislation, Madam Speaker. 24 is in both targets, and I would hope that people were aiming for a whole lot more than 24, but it's there in both. By including the 14%, that clearly shows where this government wants to go, and that is just to the 14%, and that is why we are here today. There is no willingness to want to reduce biogenic methane emissions, and we have heard that from the previous speakers, and I'll have more to say about this soon.
Grant McCallum.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, the methane-induced hot air on the other side of the House is entirely predictable. All this bill does is bring science to the targets and bring certainty to the backbone of New Zealand's economy and our hard-working farming families, and I commend this bill to the House.
Good speech.
Honourable Dr Megan Woods.
Madam Speaker, here we are in urgency, passing a really important piece of legislation around how New Zealand is going to meet its international obligations in terms of our nationally determined contribution in climate, and some really important stuff about how we as a country are going to do our bit on the global change and how we fight climate change. Now, my colleague, the Honourable Deborah Russell, talked about it's 10 years ago today that the National Party went to Paris and signed New Zealand up to the Paris Agreement. I was there, Madam Speaker, as part of the New Zealand delegation as an opposition spokesperson. And at that point, we did not think the government was going far enough, the national government, but they signed us up, and we actually had some accord across this House. Fast forward to we have largely all of the parties in the House agreeing about how we were going to meet those targets through the Zero Carbon Act. What we have today is a government that is breaking that consensus, a climate minister that doesn't seem to be allowed to be a minister for climate, that cannot get anything through his cabinet that is actually going to do New Zealand's bit on climate change and what we need to do as a country. It is an embarrassment for this government, and it is embarrassment for this minister that he is having to bring this legislation to this House under urgency. Now, Madam Speaker, this bill does two things. It makes the changes to the methane target, which we will talk about at length and have many questions about the science that his colleagues are purporting are behind this. It's complicated science, and we really want to dig into the detail of that, and we will be doing that in the committee stage. The second thing that this bill does that is incredibly important is it delinks the carbon market from New Zealand's Paris commitments. Now, what we've seen is when the Minister announced this, he crashed the carbon market. Now, let's bear in mind that this is a minister that has put all the eggs for New Zealand meeting any of its obligations into the emissions trading scheme. It said it is our sole strategy, not just a tool, but our sole strategy for how we meet our carbon commitments. And this is a minister that has crashed that market. And what kind of advice did the minister get when he was doing this? He was told that it was likely to result in volatility and negative impacts on businesses and households. There are reports that the changes that we are reading in this House under urgency will push up New Zealanders' power bills by $270 a year. We do not know what this is going to do to industry who rely on the wholesale market, because, Madam Speaker, when you take the onus of the 50% of our emissions in the agriculture sector, you put it into other sectors of the economy. And this is going to drive up our energy costs, whether that be in electricity and whether that be in petrol. So this minister has some explaining to do about the advice he got and how that is going to be mitigated. This is a minister that received advice that the legislation that we are debating under urgency will result in a contraction of our GDP. Now, this is a government that at the budget time came with all fanfare that they were bringing in a piece of policy that was going to result in 1% growth in GDP over 20 years. Well, this needs to be set against that, because this legislation we are debating here will see our economy contract. The changes that are being made here. Now, this minister was also written to by the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, a former National Party minister, I would point out, and told there was no need to do this under urgency, that this could be split out, that this actually could be thoroughly examined by people who understand this. Clearly the government members don't. They've drinking some Kool-Aid and haven't read any of the detail. But, Madam Speaker, these are serious changes that are being made. It will raise cost for New Zealanders, and we will be exploring this thoroughly in the committee stage, and Labor will not be supporting this legislation.
Ryan Hamilton.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. This is like precision surgery, Madam Speaker. It's removing the cancerous greenwashing tumour with practical, economic and environmental logic. The two can coexist. This is a very practical bill. I commend it to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote is called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Action New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te pōti whakahe.
Tāku Te Wheres. Maria Meno Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 52. The question is agreed.
Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill, first reading.
This bill is set down for second reading immediately. Honourable Simon Watts.
Madam Speaker, I move that the Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill be now read a second time. Madam Speaker, this bill amends the Climate Change Response Act 2002 to update New Zealand's biogenic methane targets and make other changes to ensure our climate legislation remains fit for purpose. The government's commitments are clear. We need targets that reflect our national economic context, continue New Zealand's contribution to international commitments, and are achievable in practice. The changes before us today provide clarity and confidence to the agricultural sector and to our wider economy. Madam Speaker, this bill did not go through the Select Committee process. That said, the decisions reflected here have not been made without due consideration. They draw on months of expert technical advice, sector engagement and independent reviews. I particularly recognise the rigorous input from the Independent Methane Review Panel, the Climate Change Commission and the dedicated teams across the Ministry for Environment and the Ministry for Primary Industries who have ensured that this legislation is robust and evidence-based. This bill does a number of things. Firstly, it updates the biogenic methane target to a range of 14 to 24% below 2017 levels by 2050. This responds to concerns that the previous target was unrealistic and economically disruptive. It legislates a review of the methane target in 2040 so that the target will continue to reflect the latest science and international developments. It defers setting the fourth emissions budget until the 31st of December 2027. This will allow time for updated advice from the Climate Change Commission that aligns with the updated biogenic methane target. It requires consideration of domestic food production when advising on and setting emissions budgets, recognising importantly that the primary sector's importance to our economy and our communities. And finally, it removes the requirement for the ETS settings to accord with New Zealand's nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. This is appropriate as the New Zealand ETS is a domestic instrument and should be focused on achieving our domestic targets and budgets. Agriculture is the backbone of our economy. It contributes over 80% of our exports and supports our rural communities across this country. We cannot afford blunt instruments that undermine our agricultural productivity. The bill ensures that our climate targets are achievable and our approach to emissions reduction are fair and evidence-based. Farmers have been clear. They need targets that are realistic and provide certainty about what is expected from them. The previous methane target created economic uncertainty across rural New Zealand. By grounding our targets in science and practicality, we ensure that climate policy supports a productive and resilient economy. New Zealand's food and fibre producers are world leaders in carbon-efficient production. And this bill, Madam Speaker, reflects our belief that a thriving climate and a thriving economy go hand in hand. Our international commitments remain unchanged. New Zealand continues to take its obligations under the Paris Agreement seriously, and this bill reinforces our continued contribution to the global effort on climate change. Technology will play a vital role in meeting these targets within the next decade. We expect methane reduction tools to be widely available. The government's investing significant money to accelerate innovation and adoption of technologies to reduce on-farm emissions. Over the next decade, we anticipate the wider rollout of efficient and scientifically proven methane reduction technologies across New Zealand farming systems. These tools will enable us to achieve the updated target while strengthening the competitiveness and value of our export and agricultural sector. New Zealand farmers are amongst the most carbon efficient producers globally, and with the right support and the right government, they will continue to lead in international markets. This bill is about balance between environmental responsibility and economic resilience. We want to support our farmers. We want to avoid punitive measures. We want to work together to deliver practical and sustainable solutions, and listening to the opposition's contributions today, it is clear that they do not agree with any of those points, and it is very clear now from the rural sector in New Zealand who on this side and in this House supports our rural sector. As the House moves into the committee stage, I welcome productive discussions. I don't think too much is going to be necessary because we've been very descriptive in the lead up to this process. Madam Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Honourable Dr Deborah Russell.
Madam Speaker, where was the select committee stage? Well, under the rules of urgency, we are not having a select committee stage. It's a real shame. Nicole McKee, a minister in that government, said yesterday, quote, "More voices make better law," unquote. There are no more voices in this debate. If I turn to the regulatory impact statement prepared by the minister's own officials, in that regulatory impact statement, it discusses the need for consultation, and it reflects on the zero carbon bill. It said that there was extensive consultation on setting the gas targets in the zero carbon bill. There was a large number of submissions to the process. There was a full select committee process. Then in terms, it says, of updating this 2050 target, the regulatory impact statement notes there has been targeted consultation, there has been some extra research. And then it says that normal legislative processes provide opportunity for public submissions and engagement as part of the select committee process. What select committee process? The minister has said that we don't need to have an extended committee stage. That is so much not the case because it has to substitute now for the select committee process, and we do need to go into some of those questions. At the core of this reset target for methane is the concept of no additional warming. It's the concept of no additional warming. And it's a disputed concept. In other countries, it's sometimes called carbon neutrality. It's a known concept, and interestingly enough, it is a concept that is pushed by countries with large agricultural sectors. The minister talks of the science that was done to set this methane range. And in fact, the minister set up his own independent methane review panel, despite having a whole body of experts sitting in the Climate Commission. You know, it's always a bit of a red flag when someone sets up their own independent panel. And then the question that was asked was a very specific question. It said, if we want no additional warming, what kind of methane target should we have? If we go for no additional warming, what kind of methane target should we have? It assumed that no additional warming was an appropriate goal in the first place. So yes, those were highly qualified scientists working on that methane review, but they were asked to answer a very particular question. And it was a particular question that assumed that no additional warming was an appropriate metric. So, is it an appropriate metric? Straightforwardly, no. It is not. And here's why. It takes a little bit to understand this because it just seems so plausible in the first place, but in reality it is not. So what that no additional warming metric puts into place, it grandfathers existing levels of emissions and says that they are okay. So any decrease from that existing level is good. Any increase to that existing level is bad. But it says that the warming that occurs to date, the level of warming from the emissions at this level is appropriate and acceptable. So let's go for an example here to help people to understand why this is a bad approach. So what I want you to imagine is a factory, and say it's pouring maybe, 1,000 litres of toxic waste into a local stream every year. Now, we'd all think that was a bad thing.
That's right. We would.
And we'd think that if they reduced that level of toxic waste a bit, say going from 1,000 litres to 900 litres, that would be a good thing because it was a reduction. So it's a big factory, it's been going a long time, it's well established, it's got its levels of waste already worked in there. And because it gets that reduction, it's seen as doing something good, and that's acceptable. But you've baked in the 900 level. Let's now imagine another factory. Starts up. There's a startup, there's someone who needs to get going. And they pour 100 levels of toxic waste into the stream as a byproduct of what they're doing. And that is categorically seen as a bad thing. So even though they are producing much less pollution than the first factory, they are bad because that is an increase. In the first factory, the one that has 900 litres of waste going in every year, that is seen as a good thing because it's come down and they're permitted to carry on. Now let's translate that to what that means in terms of agriculture. We are, stop with the juvenile undergraduate comments, David. So we are, it's not just a hypothetical example. Let's think about our major exports here. Let's think about the way we export milk powder to the world. So we are a large producer of milk powder. We have one of the biggest dairy companies, Fonterra, in the world. It's actually, it's one of our large exports. It would fall into the notion of a multinational under our tax rules and so on. So if Fonterra produces milk powder, and we do it at a significant cost in methane. What we are saying is if we do not increase that methane, in fact decrease it a little, that's a good thing as we export to the world. But then imagine a much less rich country than New Zealand. Imagine a country that is trying to build up its own dairy industry. Imagine a poor country, say somewhere in Africa, maybe somewhere in the Pacific, which is trying to develop its own dairy industry. Because it was developing its own onshore dairy industry, it would start producing methane emissions. And that would be seen as a bad thing. Because it would have no grandparented in emissions. So what this no additional warming does, it is grossly unfair because it bakes in the existing level of warming produced by methane and says that's okay. It says it's okay. So it means that over time, the inequity across the world is going to be cemented in. Instead of helping developing nations, we are going to penalise them. And we're going to accept for ourselves just keeping on with what we're doing already. So that is what no additional warming does. And that is why this side of the House rejects it. We actually need to do better. We need to do better. And we need to ensure that in a global problem that is facing the world, that as a rich nation we do our bit. No additional warming means we do not do our bit. No additional warming means we rely on the pollution we have already caused. No additional warming cements in the existing warming we cause. It is a false metric to use. And it is a metric that has been rejected by open letters by scientists, by the general body of scientific opinion across the world. It's only a small group of people who ask a very specific question, answer a very specific question, who think that it's acceptable to go down that route. So I want the members on the other side of the House to take this seriously. That government is making a very political choice to bake in no additional warming, and it's actually baked into the words of this bill. But it is a false metric, and it is a metric that enables us to do nothing. So that is unacceptable, and that is why the Labour Party is rejecting this bill.
Francisco Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will strive to deliver a calmer, more meandering speech for my second reading, as befits the tone of second reading speeches. So, I'll start by doing the obligatory opposition deploring of urgency, and then I'll move on to incorporating the viewpoints of stakeholders, because we haven't had a chance to have select committee, so I'll be reading some of the stakeholder submissions that were reacted to when the government announced its the outcome of the methane target review. And then I'll get into a little bit of myth busting with whatever time that I have left. But I wanted to first compliment the previous speaker, Dr. Deborah Russell, for her excellent explanation on why the principle of no additional warming is really not, Dr. Deborah Russell, on why the principle of no additional warming was not the correct thing. I think her calm and good explanation is a really good example of why it's not a good thing. I do want to spend a little bit of time, as I've I guess put a little bit of a road mark on questioning the need for urgency on this bill, because it does change the target, and it changes the target for the 2050 target. So we've got a little bit of a way to go to get there. So why change the target under urgency? And look, it does make some changes to some urgent stuff. It changes the fourth emissions reduction plan deadline from 2025 to 2027. I can understand why that may have needed to be done under urgency, but I contend. I argue to you, Madam Speaker, that the actual cost of changing the methane target under urgency without giving a chance for any stakeholder input, and what that does to the idea of cross-party consensus that we used to have in this country, and the level of disruption that will cause to communities as governments chop and change emissions targets really disproportionately outweighs any conceivable benefit that they might have gained from it. And it's especially baffling when you consider the background context of this, because I had a chance to, as I alluded to in my first reading speech, to look through the climate plans of the various coalition parties and the coalition agreements as well. And not a single coalition agreement actually mentioned, look, I'll concede that I think that the ACT National Coalition Agreement did say that there was going to be a review of the methane target, but a review was all that was committed to. And likewise with national parties' climate commitments coming into the 2023 election, all that was committed to was a review. So actually, National didn't come into the election promising to change the target. If anything, they committed to New Zealand's target. So it's really baffling why they chose to do this under urgency when it wasn't mentioned in the change of the target wasn't mentioned in the coalition agreement or mentioned in the pre-election commitment of the primary governing party. And I want to move on now to the incorporating the views of the stakeholders, because I think this is really important, because normally there would be a chance for stakeholders to have input and actually provide feedback on the contents of this legislation. And I am going to read, Madam Speaker, because I don't want to get the viewpoints of the people that I'm quoting from wrong. And I'm quoting from something that Professor James Renwick, who was on who was one of the climate change commissioner, one of the inaugural climate change commissioner from 2019 to 2024, when and I quote, "The government's announcement on methane's reductions, it represents a major step backwards in ambition and climate action. The methane reductions mandated under the Zero Carbon Act called for a 24 to 47% reduction by 2050, in line with the science of the IPCC report on 1.5 degree of warming. The revised emissions reductions are 14 to 24% by 2050. So the top of the new range is below the bottom of the old range. The idea of no additional warming, and that is one of the key principles behind this, seem to have won the day in terms of scientific advice to the government. This approach goes easy on the agricultural sector, and in no way does it represent our, quote, highest possible ambition as laid out in Article 4 of the Paris Agreement, to which New Zealand is a signatory. Our trading partners are unlikely to smile on this reduction in ambition. The climate is currently changing rapidly, and we need to be doing all we can to slow the warming and avoid catastrophic impact from extremes and from tipping points crossed. Yes, carbon dioxide emissions are the #1 target, and we must get to zero as soon as possible. But methane emissions are the next most important, and emissions reductions there would quickly translate into reductions in atmospheric concentrations because of the short lifespan of methane in the atmosphere, providing a cooling effect in the short, medium term. To pull our weight internationally under the Paris Agreement, New Zealand should still be aiming for the reductions set as law in the Zero Carbon Act, not these watered-down targets. This week, a major international conference on climate change adaptation is taking place in Christchurch. We can currently adapt to climate change pressures in most places most of the time. Every 1/10 of a degree of warming makes that adaptation harder, and at some point we will no longer be able to adapt. There is real urgency around reducing emissions of all greenhouse gases in every sector in every country. This can be achieved by working as hard as we can across the board. The new methane targets increase the risk of unmanageable consequences from climate change. And I think that's something that's really important to reflect on. And I want to reflect on one of the things that he said in his letter, in that our international partners are unlikely to smile at our change in targets. And I think this is actually something the government realizes, because in the regulatory impact statement for this bill, I'll just pull it up, they actually redacted the sections to do with the trade implications of the changes and the possible costs that might be incurred to New Zealand, and the possible risks that our various industries, not only the agricultural industry, but across the board that rely on that green premium. They redacted paragraphs 126 to 128 that talk about the risks of the change, but they forgot to redact a paragraph that referred to these risks, paragraph 145. So that means that there are risks in this that they're kind of acknowledging by forgetting to redact paragraph 145. And I know for a fact from an OIA that I've gotten back from either NZT or MFAT, that our trade partners have actually warned us against the change in this in the methane pledge. That this was something that was discussed in that was raised in an email, something that was raised in a meeting, and something that was discussed in a phone call to officials in New Zealand from our partners, from our trade partners, that the NDC has actually mentioned under the New Zealand-UK Free Trade Agreement and the New Zealand-European Free Trade Agreement. And it's a shame because the OIA that I got back was so heavily redacted that it didn't end up saying anything. It just said that it was raised in the call, but they declined to release the notes that they took of the phone call, the notes they took of the meeting. They even declined to release the actual email. They just provided a summary of the email in which the trade risk was raised. So it's really interesting because there's been a rhetoric that this government is going to achieve economic prosperity for New Zealanders. I mean, if you look at the GDP figures, it's anything but that. And there's this rhetoric that that the governments of the centre-right are the adults on the economy, the ones who are going to create economic prosperity. But what this act shows is that not only are they willfully disregarding evidence, they're actually hiding the evidence so that we can't actually discuss the full implications of this change, the costs and possible benefits of it are. So in conclusion, Madam Speaker, we really do not support this bill, and we look forward to changing it as soon as we can. Thank you.
Pamjit Pama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm taking this call on behalf of the ACT Party to support Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill. Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge the Minister in charge for this bill because he has already described what this bill intends to do. And I also want to acknowledge my ACT Party colleague, Honourable Andrew Hogarth, who spoke in the first reading of this bill and provided a really good background to this bill and why this bill is necessary. And he was speaking from his own experience as well as a farmer. And I would say this, Madam Speaker, that farming is not just like a sector on the list of our sectors. It is actually the foundation of our economy. And we are a very, very proud food-producing nation. And the food that we produce is really high quality. And on this side, Madam Speaker, we back our farmers, and we know we have to back our farmers based on evidence. And from my circles talking to farming community farmers, I know that our farmers do everything possible to support the environment, and they do it in a very, very responsible manner. They produce really efficiently, and we also know that, Madam Speaker, that they adopt technology as soon as it becomes available. So we cannot expect them to apply something that is not available. So we have to be realistic as well. And we all know, Madam Speaker, that we want more and more money going into the health sector, more and more money going into education, more and more money going into our welfare sector. But that money needs to come from somewhere. And our sector supports that, brings that revenue that we can invest in so many sectors. And also, if our economy is doing well, we can put more resources towards climate change as well. So climate change cannot happen in isolation. We need to support our economy so that we can put more measures in place to tackle climate change. Madam Speaker, on this side, we understand how economy works, but on the other side, listening to those speeches, we can clearly see that they don't understand how the economy works. Because for them, I know that, Madam Speaker, it's just about setting up a printing machine in their background. They will start printing money. They think you can just put a printing machine in your background and start printing money. And can I ask those members to reflect on this, that just setting up a printing machine and start printing something also involves carbon footprint. So I ask those members to reflect on that as well. So, Madam Speaker, to finish, I would say on this side, we back farmers. We want to see that our targets are realistic, they are balanced, and they are grounded in economic reality. So I support the bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Mark Patterson.
Madam Speaker, New Zealand First continues to support the bill. Following up from Pamjit Palmer, not only did the opposition not understand the economy, but they actually don't understand the science here either. With respect, you're boxing at the wrong target. I absolutely respect that you're trying to do the best for the planet, but we're talking about biogenic methane, which is in a closed biological cycle. We're not talking about the emissions from fossil fuels. And wasn't it instructive to hear Deborah Russell's kind of convoluted anecdote about how this all works, and actually admitting that she wanted New Zealand emissions come down so African emissions could go up. New Zealand First will stand absolutely behind New Zealand farmers. We're not taking a second thought to trying to stimulate other agricultural systems, although we are going to be part of the solution at a global problem, not at a global level, by the money we're putting into innovation. $400 million we're investing, and that technology is coming along pretty quickly now. There is, boluses vaccines in development. I think there's about 10 or a dozen now that AgriZero have invested in. We know, for example, that we've managed to isolate genetics that just naturally animals that emit less methane, which appear to be more efficient because they're utilising more of that energy for growth into meat and milk or wool. So that's and that could be easily incorporated through our systems, and particularly in a dairy industry where very few bulls come through LOC or Ambreed. It's a very focused system in terms of the genetics they use. So, you know, there is all sorts of solutions coming along, and those solutions can be disseminated out to the world. Actually, it's a big economic opportunity for New Zealand, this R&D that we're doing to actually help those African farmers. But in the meantime, we are not going to shut New Zealand farms down. So, sorry, we are just not going to do it. And also, just the efficiency of our farmers. I just want to reflect my own anecdote of meeting an international professor at Lincoln University telling me that he could not find anywhere in the world to send his agricultural students from pastoral farming management. He said there is nowhere in the world that can compete, that he could send them where they would actually learn at a farming systems level how to do it any better than what they do here. He said, his direct quote was, New Zealand pastoral farming systems are akin to magic. And most of the comparative countries have got these vast industrial scale grain-fed systems, which you know, they're not in those closed biological systems like we are here in our grass-fed systems. We are confident in the science that we put up. It was a reputable panel. New Zealand First, as I've said, we would have gone further. We would have just gone for the 14%. We see absolutely no reason to put our farmers out of business whilst, you know, Russia and China and the States continue to spew out vast quantities of carbon emissions. So that's New Zealand's first position, have not changed at all through since the first reading, and we continue to support the bill.
E te pika.
O Rini Kaipara.
Tēnā koe. E te pika, it's deeply disturbing. We're into the second reading of this bill without any chance to debate, have a robust debate about it. And I agree, where is the select committee stage? Public consultation, gone. The Commission consulting with Māori, gone. Community input into emissions budgets, gone. Ka wana, e mataku ana koe I te aha. Madam Speaker, this government has decided that climate decisions are too technical for the public, too complex for iwi, too distracting for democracy. And apparently only the minister knows best. A minister who thinks weakening the methane target counts as climate leadership. A minister whose idea of climate strategy is we'll sort something out by 2050. This isn't efficiency, it is authoritarian convenience. This bill should be strengthening our climate framework. Instead, it guts it, hollows it, and hands the pen to polluters. It removes the requirement that ETS unit settings must accord with our Paris Agreement targets. Put simply, Madam Speaker, we are no longer required to follow the international commitments that we promised the world. Shame. This is the coalition rewriting the rules because the science is inconvenient and because Matua Shane Fossil Fuels Jones wants to turn Aotearoa into the Dubai of the South Pacific, minus the money, minus the plan, and minus the future. And then they're moving ETS settings from annual to biennial reviews, meaning fewer checkpoints, fewer corrections, fewer chances to stop mistakes before they blow the budget and blow our planet. This is set and forget climate policy, except it's not forgetting, it's willful negligence. This bill strips the Climate Change Commission of its role to advise emissions reduction plans. Why? Because the minister doesn't like being told he's wrong. And the Commission keeps making the cardinal sin of using science. This government's attitude is very clear. If the experts disagree with you, silence them. If the evidence embarrasses you, bury it. If the science warns you, ignore it. Every timeline in the Climate Change Response Act has been pushed out like a can being kicked down the road. The government says it's streamlining. Let's be honest, they're stalling. Stalling for agriculture, stalling for oil and gas, stalling for mates who don't want to cut emissions because it might hurt their profit margin this quarter. Government agencies were supposed to be carbon neutral by 2025. Too hard, they say. Too soon. Too ambitious. So what does this government do? It pushes it to 2050, the same deadline as everyone else. The truth is, it wasn't too hard. It was too inconvenient because it required leadership. And leadership is something this government has outsourced to the fossil fuel industry. I want to close with some truths about Matua Shane, who I would say is the unofficial Minister of Emissions. Matua Shane Jones has become that. He wants mines, he wants drilling, he wants economic growth, but only the kind that melts ice caps and floods our marae. He talks about resource sovereignty, but what he really means is extract everything until Tangaroa starts invoicing us directly. If this bill had a mascot, it would be Matua Shane Jones riding a diesel bulldozer through a wetland yelling, what did you just yell? Progress. It sounds funny, but not when his own kuia are weeping, Madam Speaker. Not when the cousins can't collect kai moana. Not when our mokopuna are deprived of their pātaka kai or a place to swim because it's filthy. And his own hapu continue to scream, whaka mutua atu. Te Pāti Māori will not stand by any government that gambles the lives of our people, diminishes te tiriti o Waitangi and distinguishes tino ranga tiratanga. All while they mock science, they mock our whanaunga across te moana nui a Kiwa, and they mock the future of our mokopuna. Tino korene. It goes without saying, Te Pāti Māori strongly opposes this bill, and we do not commend it to the House. Ka whawhai tonu mātou, ake, ake, ake.
Steve Abel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill has been rushed upon us like a slash-laden flash flood on the Esk Valley. Fred Dagg, I mean, it's the first thing that came to my mind. John Clarke, the creator of the great Fred Dagg, said that recognising a problem and doing nothing about it has the same effect as not noticing the problem in the first place. And that is a charitable take on this government's climate strategy, Madam Speaker. Because worse than saying that they believe in climate change and doing nothing about it is saying that they believe in climate change and then doing all the things that make it worse. And saying that the bald, hard science of climate change, balder than I am, is climate catastrophising, betrays a deep disdain for the fact of the existential threat. No nation is an island unto itself, Madam Speaker. We are all a part of the whole planet, and we are all a part of that community of humanity who face the existential challenge of climate change, and we should have a sense of responsibility and duty to do our bit, however little that bit may be. Just because we're small doesn't mean we shouldn't play our part. Whenever has that been the ethos of our nation? Except when the dairy industry has to play their part. Imagine if we were at a climate discussion and a big oil-producing nation said, oh, we can't do anything about our oil-producing emissions because it's such a big part of our economy. That is the logic, that is the exact logic of this government. Just because it's a big part of the economy, we're not going to change anything. How does Saudi Arabia have any different argument? They have the exact same argument. But all of us have to do our bit. All of us have to address our biggest emissions challenges. The Minister said in his first speech that our farmers are the most efficient food producers in the world. There's an argument we hear from this government all the time. In his second speech, he said, we are among the most carbon efficient globally. You'll see this chart later in the debate, but can I just say that it's very clear in terms of carbon efficiency that we are not in the top 3. We're not even in the top 5. In the entire OECD, in terms of carbon efficiency of farming, we fall behind Australia, the United States, every one of the 27 European Union countries. We fall at number 48 in terms of carbon efficiency. It's the science, Grant McCullum. You might not like it, it's the science. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why we fall behind, for a very simple reason. Because most of our production is ruminant animals. That is the simple fact of the science. But, okay, so then the next question. So you accept that we're not the most carbon efficient food producers because most of what we're producing is ruminant animals. It's a list of the countries and their carbon efficiency. I'll explain it later.
Order. We don't need the conversation across the House, please.
I can table that graph for you, yeah, that's right. Now, then the next question becomes, which Nicola Gregg alludes to, are we the most carbon efficient animal producers? It turns out we're not even that. And the most important point is the difference in efficiency is not most evident between countries, it's between production styles. So there is a farmer right now in the Waikato who is farming dairy cows at 25% lower methane emissions than his neighbour. So the point is that we can achieve substantial reductions in emissions across all our farming systems if we have the ambition. But this government has the climate ambition of a flat sheet. Absolutely no climate ambition. We are abrogating our responsibility as a global citizen to be part of this existential challenge. You know the biggest threat to food production globally over the next century? It is climate change. It is global heating. It is extreme weather. And you're locking us into more of that.
Just for the members' benefit, I am not doing that.
Pardon me, Madam Speaker.
Catherine Weed.
Look, on this side of the House, we respect our farmers, we respect our agriculture sector, which contributes 81% to our exports. We have the most carbon efficient farmers in the world, and we do not want to send our food production offshore to less carbon efficient countries. This is a realistic, balanced approach to methane targets. I commend this bill to the House.
Honourable Rachel Brookham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, we've heard the chairperson of the Environment Committee talk about carbon efficient farming. And here, of course, we are talking about methane target changing, not the carbon target changing. But it does remind me of when Dr. Rod Carr was the chairperson of the Climate Commission. He would, here's some disparaging remarks from across the aisle there, and I don't know why that would be, because he was an economist. We've heard the other side challenging the economics of the arguments that we're making, and was a very proper and diligent person doing a very difficult job. But there were some scoffs from the other side of the House, which makes me wonder about the change in chair of that commission. Interesting. Wow. And, there's a minute. I get it, there's a minute from the other side. I can assure those members that I've got plenty of things to say. Do not worry about that. But I was reminiscing, Madam Speaker, on what the chair used to say. And he was like, well, if you want to reduce your methane targets, fine. But you have to change your carbon targets then. That is what he would say. There is a budget. If you're going to change one input, there's a corresponding effect on the other. So if you want to reduce the methane, if you say, well, the farmers have said it's impossible, we'll take that at the word of the previous speaker. Fine. But then you have to be more ambitious about carbon, about nitrous oxide, about fluoride. And are we seeing any of that ambition, Madam Speaker? No, we are not. We're not seeing any conversation even of that entire budget. So I would like the Minister to comment on this when he gets to the committee stage. The committee stage that is about to be upon us, Madam Speaker, because of course we are in all stages urgency. And it is very disrespectful of the people across the aisle to say, well, just sit down and get there. No, we are the opposition that has very limited time to hold this terrible government to account about legislation that, one, seems to make no sense, and two, could result, it will result in this more head in the sand thinking of this government that, oh, well, we just don't need to do anything on climate change because we're better than everyone else. What a ridiculous approach. Why bother signing up to international agreements? Why bother signing up to bilateral trade agreements that say that we will do our part when clearly this government has no intention of doing our part? We heard from ministers before. Minister Mark Patterson said, oh, well, all these other countries are putting, I can't remember what his word was, it was an interesting word, but they're putting out all the emissions. They're not, all their carbon emissions, they're doing it, so should we. He didn't say so should we. I'm inferring that that was the point of his argument, if there was some logic there. And that goes against Paris, that goes against all of New Zealand's international ambitions in the world, Madam Speaker, where we say, we go around all sides of the house, go around the world and say, New Zealand is a small country with no near neighbours, and we have to rely on international laws and rules being followed. That is what we say to the world, because we know that we're vulnerable here. We know that we rely on these international rules being followed, and so we diligently go and sign up to some of them to match our rhetoric. But what we are seeing here is the undoing of that promise and that rhetoric, because the arguments put forward by Mark Patterson that some other countries are emitting a whole lot of carbon, and so therefore it's okay for us to reduce our ambition, all that does is undermine what we go around saying and the importance of international agreements. So it is a shameful day. Now, if farmers are so efficient, why do we need to change this target that already includes the 24 in it? Presumably it is because that 24 isn't going to be met and they want it to be at this lower range of 14%. And we will go through this in the committee stage as well, but where are we going to get to within those numbers if we don't have any pricing? And I know that this bill is not about pricing, but it's important to note that this is going in totally the opposite direction of where the National Party were. They said, we don't like the sort of pricing arrangements that you were working on with farm leaders for so long, Labour Party, but we do still think there should be a pricing mechanism. Crickets. Because of course, the whole point of changing these targets is because they don't want any pricing mechanism, which is a very big change in direction. And you could say, well, that's change in direction because they're in a coalition with a party, with the ACT Party, who is determined to do nothing on climate change and has a record on that. And now a New Zealand First Party that, despite being around when all this legislation was passed, before I was in this House, has changed its tune as well. But it is the National Party who has the Minister of Climate Change. It is the National Party who stands up time and time again and says, we're in it for the farmers and you are not, and we just want to say yes, 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 grow, grow, grow. At some point, there is a time in any regulatory environment where you have to say no. But these people seem to think that if they just say yes, yes, yes enough, then it'll be for someone else to finally say no. And who will those somebody else's be? Well, they could be our trading partners that say, hang on a moment, New Zealand, you said that you were doing your part under Paris, but now you are not, so we are not going to trade with you anymore. That's a pretty big no. Yeah. It could be the ever-warming climate with other countries looking at New Zealand saying, well, you're not doing your part, little old New Zealand in the bottom of the world. You're going to have more storms. It's going to be the farmers who hurt because of that. That seems to be like a very big no as well. We're talking wider in the range of issues that have been discussed during this urgency. If your rivers are so polluted or if all the water is taken, well, no farmer is going to be able to grow anything, are they? That's a pretty big no as well. So let's be realistic. You cannot say yes, yes, yes forever. There is always points of saying no, and that is what grown-ups know. Yeah. Now, moving on to food. We heard some interjections there about food. Food is very important. I'm very happy to be the food safety spokesperson for the Labour Party and former food safety minister. So I know very much how important food is to New Zealanders. And what is happening in this bill is there is a new requirement that food production has to be a consideration. And it's about domestic food production, but the explanatory note says that it also refers to export. So, and there are questions around what the Climate Commission will be required to do when looking at this food. Is it really real questions like, if our climate changes by more than 1.5 degrees, as it has, where will we be able to grow things? Where do the carbohydrates come from for New Zealand, given that most of us consume them, but we import a whole lot of those? What is the role of protein? Are these the issues that the Climate Commission will be looking at? Will it be looking at how much food do we need domestically, or is it all on exports? Is it that total export focus? But more importantly, Madam Speaker, will they be funded appropriately? Because all we've seen from this government is cynical cuts.
Time has expired. Grant McCallum.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I stand here in the House today wearing my proud tie with the cows on them because I am a Fonterra supplier. And I think it's important to remember ask the question, why are companies like Danone and Nestle coming to us and wanting to do business with us in response to what the previous speaker said? It's because we are good at what we do. They know we're good environmentally. They know we're good in terms of our low methane emissions and improving on it. And I commend this bill to the House.
Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Megan Woods.
Madam Speaker, we're hearing an awful lot of rhetoric from the government benches about what a great day for farmers this is and how they're the party that backs farmers. We heard from the chair of the Environment Committee that this was about respect for the people that provide 81% of our exports. I suggest to those backbenchers that are getting up and reading their lines that have been supplied to them by the Minister's office that they actually start asking some questions. And Madam Speaker, what I suggest they do is they have a look at some of the Cabinet and official documents that have been released under the OIA on the advice that their Minister received on this. And what that advice did was redact the implications of our obligations under trade agreements. Now, I call on that Minister to release that redacted information to this House for the purposes of this debate, because what that information has said is that agreements with the EU and with the UK contain certain requirements around sustainability, including not weakening our environmental protections for trade advantage. Now, Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge the Honourable Damien O'Connor, who went and put in place those trade agreements that actually are the things that is the most beneficial to our farmers, the ability to sell our products overseas. And the changes that are being made here potentially put those trade agreements at risk. If this is not the case, then the Minister can clear this up. He can come down to the House during committee stage and he can release to the opposition, to his own backbench and to the New Zealand public exactly what that advice said. Because why it was redacted is a mystery. Why should New Zealanders not know what the implication on our ability for 81% of our exports to reach their markets in high-value markets like Europe and like the UK? Why would the Minister keep that information, not only from this House, but from New Zealanders? So I call on that Minister to come down and tell us this. So instead of his backbench talking about farming being the foundation of our economy and all the other trite rhetoric that they're trotting out, let's have that evidence-based debate. Let's put the information on the table and let's see who really is undermining our rural sector and our food producers. And it is changes like this that put it all at risk, and a minister that won't even front up to this House or to New Zealand with the advice he's received. Now, one of the things about receiving advice is not behind the black vivid marker to shield all of that under the OIA. So I call on that minister to release that. It's not that difficult. You can table it in the committee stages, Minister, and it is not hard. Now, Madam Speaker, this is a bill that not only changes that methane target, thank you, Deborah, not only changes that methane target, but as we talked about, decouples the ETS settings from our international targets. Now, this has huge economic implications, and we will be calling on the Minister to tell us what advice he received when it comes to the committee stage. Because it's very simple, Madam Speaker. If you don't reduce emissions in one sector of the economy, another part of the economy has to pick up that slack. And that will be New Zealand motorists when they go and fill up their cars. That will be New Zealand households when they pay their power bills. And that will be New Zealand industry who cannot keep employing people. And these are the pieces of advice that this minister received. This is the advice that this minister knows that he is passing legislation to implement. So, Madam Speaker, this is a piece of legislation that puts New Zealand's economic security at risk. It risks our market security and it will raise the cost of living.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am pleased to take a call on this bill. Madam Speaker, it's very clear the farmers have been clear that they need a realistic methane target that provides certainty about what's expected of them. And I think they deserve that, Madam Speaker. The farmers of East Coast, Tairāwhiti and the Eastern Bay of Plenty want that. And this bill delivers it for our hard-working food producers, and I commend it to the House.
Ryan Hamilton.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a great bill. I commend it to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā pōti whakahe.
At New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ko tahi te pōti whakahe.
Takuta Ferris.
Ko tahi te pōti whakahe.
Mariamino Kapakingi.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 52. The question is agreed to.
Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill, second reading.
This bill is set down for committee stage immediately. I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill.
Yeah, I declare this committee in.
Members, the House is in committee on the Climate Change Response 2050 Target and Other Matters Amendment Bill. We come first to Part 1. This is the debate on clauses 4 and 5, the 2050 target for biogenic methane emissions reductions. The question is that Part 1 stand part. Francisco Hernandez.
Chair, I'm hoping to enter into the same format as last night of rapid fire questions and answers. So let me begin by asking the Minister, does he stand by his comments at the Belém conference that we must press forward and we must keep 1.5 degrees alive? Madam Chair.
The Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
Chair, there's obviously a whole lot of work that we need to do in this committee stage, given that we didn't have a select committee. And I propose that we do it clause by clause rather carefully. And so I do want to work in this first session around clause 4 of the bill. And what clause 4 does, it looks like it's very. It does two things really. Well, the Minister hasn't told us, so I'll tell you. So the first bit it does is it puts in the revised methane target in. It inserts it into the bill. That's in clause 4.1. It amends the Climate Change Act to do that. And then the second part of clause 4 is it inserts a new section into the Act requiring the government to review the methane target in 2040. And there's a couple of aspects of that that we want to talk about. One is the particular dates, considering trading partners and considering no additional warming. So first of all, I want to focus very, very tightly on the revised methane target. So that's clause 4, new clause 4, 1 and 2. It is quite a low, short bit there. So, having said all that, it does. One of the ways that the government got to this new lower range was by appointing its own independent methane panel. So there's a huge set of issues there which could have been explored in select committee. It appointed, despite the fact that we have a climate commission which does expert science and works with expert science on climate, which had already done a heap of work on methane, which had done work on methane which was credible and accepted by the broader scientific community. I want to understand why the Minister felt that it was necessary to set up their own, and why the government felt it was necessary to set up their own independent methane panel. So if the Minister could answer that, please.
Francisco Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're not doing the standing up, sitting down thing, I'll dump all my questions in one go then. And just wanting to thank my previous the previous speaker, my colleague, the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell, for going clause by clause. We intend to do that as well. And I will start by part 4, section 1. My questions are, which stakeholders were consulted as part of the shift from the 24 to 47% to the 14 to 24% target range, and what was the criteria for deciding which stakeholders to consult as part of this process, and which ones were invited to take part in this process but did not decide to take part in this process, and what were the reasons that they gave for not wanting to be part of the process. My second question revolves around the emissions from the decrease in the target from 24 to 40, from the range 24-47% to the new 14 to 24% target. What are the emissions what are the increase in emissions associated, assuming that the bottom range of the target, 14%, is the range that was met, and assuming that the bottom range of the previous target was the one that was met, so calculating 24 to 14% in terms of the emissions increase from that. My third question revolves around the question of distributional impacts. Was there anything done regarding on which sectors of the economy were most likely to benefit from the change from 24 to 47 to 14 to 24%? I also wanted to canvass some amendments that I've drafted around what this potential target could be. One of the amendments that I've drafted, I'm not sure if it's there yet or if it's still with the House Office, is letting the target be set by the Independent Climate Change Commission. I think that would restore confidence in the independence of our Commission, and also make sure that that what the Minister's target is actually considering the best possible range of scientific evidence. And I want to return to the question that the Minister hasn't answered. Does he stand by the commitment, the statement that he made at Belém, that we must keep 1.5 alive? And does this revised target at either 14 or 24% is that compatible with a 1.5 degree pathway that he said that we need to keep alive in Belém? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excuse me, Minister, but before I take a next call, I'll just reiterate how I'd like to see the House running, which is the question answer, and I hadn't done that, so the Minister wasn't aware that that's how I'd like it to run. So if you have a line of questions and your time runs out, or you get to the end of your questions, I will continue to call you so that you can continue your line of questioning. The Honourable Simon Watts.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for clarification. In regards to the first question by the member, do I stand by those statements? Yes, the government is committed to its international commitments and the targets in which we are committed to. In regards to the questions around clause 4.1, in effect, that is the clause that is setting the target for 2050, amending section 5Q1B2 around the 14 to 24%. In regards to the question around stakeholders engaged, a wide range of stakeholders were engaged as part of this process, including independent scientific review. We also got advice from the Independent Climate Change Commission, a number of environmental groups, which that member will be well aware of, and the agricultural sector groups, and also agricultural sector retailers and producers as well. Question in regards to distributional impacts, absolutely, this government did consider the economic considerations in regards to the impacts of target setting, and that was used in order to inform the decision that we made.
The Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to remind the Minister that he hasn't answered my first question, which is why he appointed a methane review panel in the first place, because it does underpin a lot of what has gone on in this research. And I'm going to add to that question because it really does matter, because he actually got competing sets of advice. We know, in fact, that the Climate Commission recommended setting the methane range at 35 to 47% below 2017 levels. So the Minister has made a very deliberate choice between the range recommended by the Climate Commission and the range recommended by the Methane Review Panel. So I would actually like to understand why he chose to set aside the Independent Climate Commission's research and instead go for the research that was came from this Methane Review Panel. I'd just like to remind the Minister that, of course, that Methane Review Panel had a very, very restricted focus. As I said in my second reading speech, it was directed to answer a very specific question which assumed the concept of no additional warming was correct. So given that there was a huge assumption sitting underpinning that panel's work, why did he prefer that panel's work instead of the work of the Independent Climate Commission?
Madam Chair.
The Honourable Simon Watts.
Well, it's not correct to make the assumption that we preferred any advice over others. We took a wide range of advice in regards to making this decision. We set up an independent methane review panel made up of independent scientists with expertise in this area, which provided advice into that process. They provided advice in regards to two separate scenarios, of which is being considered alongside the advice from the Climate Change Commission. So that is the rationale and the methodology of which we followed.
Members, it's time for me to leave the chair for the lunch break. The House will resume when the committee is suspended until 2 p.m.